Chapter 567. Night fell. Arendelle's port area was still bustling with activity. Since the opening of the southern route, the kingdom's trade had increased by at least 30%. As one of the few kingdoms that had not been invaded, Arendelle had become the first choice of many merchants. Some had even secretly moved their family properties to settle down here. Princess Royal's powerful strength was a form of protection. As long as Arendelle had Princess Royal, no one would dare to provoke Arendelle. In a dark alley, two sneaky figures were approaching. They showed each other something and then quickly went into the alley next to them. The eldest son of the Thornflower Grand Duke is on his way here. A gloomy-looking man leaned forward and slowly said, "Our undercover agent is among his group. We can get their movements at any time." "What is Second Prince's plan?" The other person was a middle-aged aristocrat with a scholarly look. However, his expression was somewhat gloomy. He reached out with his hand and made a throat-slitting gesture. He said in a deep voice, "Can we kill him?" The gloomy-looking man hesitated and slowly said, "It will be difficult. The eldest son of the Thornflower Grand Duke has a very powerful wizard beside him. If we kill him, I'm afraid we will have to suffer a lot of casualties. Besides, if we do that, won't we anger Princess Royal of Arendelle? Her strength is unfathomable. Even the shadow thieves do not dare to offend her." The middle-aged aristocrat glanced at him and said in a deep voice, "As long as we kill him before he arrives in Arendelle, there will be no problems. Once he arrives in Arendelle, he will naturally be under the protection of Princess Royal. Princess Royal will not allow others to assassinate her guests in her territory. This is a provocation to her dignity. However, if he is killed before he arrives in Arendelle, it will have nothing to do with her. The second son of the Thornflower Grand Duke has died. The third son is a good-for-nothing. The fourth son is still quite young. If we can kill his eldest son..." At this point he couldn't help but chuckle. Clearly the other party already knew the result. The gloomy man hesitated for a moment before slowly saying, "I can contact the assassins, but I'm not sure if I'll succeed. They're asking for a high price." The middle-aged noble nodded and said, "No problem. I'll transfer the funds to you immediately." The night gradually deepened. The two of them chatted for a long time before leaving in different directions. One of them entered the tavern, while the other returned to the residence of the second prince of the Falcon Kingdom. Southern Duchy, Wind Spear Hills territory. In an exquisitely decorated mansion, a group of young noble men and women were holding a banquet. Exquisite pastries were placed on the long table, and the bards of the tavern were invited to perform here. The focus of the audience was a beautiful woman with long blonde hair. The young nobles were trying their best to show off their strengths in front of her like peacocks courting a mate. From time to time, the other noble women would look at her with envy and jealousy. However, when they saw her beauty and the incomparably expensive jewelry she wore, they couldn't help but reveal a trace of frustration. Young, beautiful, rich. With a noble birth and excellent bloodline, the woman in front of them had become the target of the nobles of the Southern Duchy since she appeared. Arendelle was Princess Anna's best friend, a distinguished guest of the royal court, and had her own chamber of commerce. Adele Isabella looked at everything in front of her with boredom. In her opinion, the flaunting of these nobles was so ridiculous. Apart from the gifts left by their fathers, many of them were ignorant and incompetent people. Especially those who wanted to show off their martial arts in front of her. She could even easily deal with them all with one hand. At this moment, her appearance was very different from before. She was a woman who was good at learning and smart enough. With simple training, she had grasped everything a noble woman should know. Her hair had turned a beautiful golden color, and her expression was always graceful and elegant with a decent smile. Occasionally, her gaze would fall on a noble, and they would immediately become excited. No one could guess what she was thinking. Although she had been in and out of various banquets during this time, she had maintained a good relationship with everyone. There were many noble children who wanted to win her heart, but no one knew that all of this was a joke in her eyes. "My dear sister." Rafi's Isabella, who should be her cousin in name, came over. He was a young and handsome man with long blonde hair. He had inherited the excellent bloodline left by his father, but his face was pale and he seemed to have drunk too much. Ever since she returned to the Southern Duchy, her nominal cousin had started to crazily pursue her, not only because of her beauty, but also because of her astonishing wealth. Adele Isabella showed an elegant smile and avoided the other party's hand without leaving a trace. When the other party's expression was a little surprised, she smiled at the right time and said slowly, "Cousin Raphael, it seems a little boring here. Why don't we go out for a walk?" The young noble children cast envious eyes, and Rafis nodded with surprise and a little pride. Adele Isabella watched all this with a tranquil gaze. Probably no one knew that in her heart, this cheap cousin in front of her was already a half-dead man, and the nature of a pirate had been left in her bones. According to the original plan and her mission, her cheap cousin would die in an accident not long after. He might die in the hands of bandits or he might die for other reasons. The process was not important. What was important was that he must die. As a descendant of Isabella, she would also be eligible for inheritance. This would be a large territory near the south coast. The mission had begun. All the plans were working normally. Although nominally controlling a chamber of commerce, Adele Isabella was actually controlling an army behind the curtain, including the elite troops disguised as caravan guards, as well as the assassins from Mordor City. Recently, some small accidents had happened in the southern duchy, and some nobles had died. No one knew who was behind the scenes, and it was estimated that no one would be willing to investigate at this time. After all, these accidents did not seem to have any problems. Before leaving, Adele quietly winked to the side, and soon a rogue disguised as a servant quietly left. No one knew where he went, but Adele knew that the time was ripe. The mission given by His Excellency Soren. So, she could complete it beautifully, and presumably this would be rewarded by His Excellency. Chapter 568. Outside the gorgeous noble manor. A young man walked out cautiously. He looked around and then disappeared into the shadows. This was an advanced rogue. Maybe he was not very strong, but it was easy to deal with a few noble guards. The young man went all the way outside. At this moment, there were already 3 men waiting for him nearby. Most of the pirates' images were not up to standard, so those who stayed by Adele Isabella's side as followers were basically selected to look more normal. These people still had to pay attention to their image, but the people who operated in the dark did not have so many concerns. In front of him were 3 old pirates, one of whom even participated in the battle against the Swamp King. "How's the plan going?" The young man glanced at the others who were already present and said in a deep voice, "There must be no mistakes in the task given by His Excellency Beheader." The middle-aged man, whose left ear was missing a section, seemed to have been bitten off by something, nodded and replied, "The bandits and robbers nearby have all been taken in by us. These guys don't know our identity at all and they didn't alert the other forces. Some bandits and robbers were hiding in the wild forest. Not many people would care too much about them." "Very good." A cold light appeared in the young man's eyes and he whispered, "It's almost time to let that annoying noble die. Next. It's about the inheritance of the territory. Lady Adele must be the first heir of the Windspear territory." The 3 men looked at each other and said, "Understood. The territory of the Southern Principality. Even idiots should know that His Excellency Soren was going to attack the kingdom near the south coast. This would be an important starting point and the key for their forces to break through the coastal blockade and go deep into the Southern Principality. The Mordor threat was fermenting little by little. Their task must be accelerated. Before the other nobles became aware of this, everything would become an established fact. At that time, even if they found out, it would be difficult to stop them, unless they dared to go to war with the city of Mordor. Northern Sea. A large warship slowly moved towards Arendelle. There were 2 medium-sized frigates next to it. The sailors on the deck were all navy, and they had the Thornflower logo on their chests. "Teacher." A young and elegant noble man walked onto the deck. He had a scholarly aura and looked more like a scholar than a noble. Standing in front of him was a wizard who wasn't young. He didn't show any spell rings that represented his rank, but he could feel that he was a high-grade wizard. The nobleman walked over and lowered his head slightly. "Are we really going to Arendelle? I think it will be very difficult for us to complete the task Father gave us. The strength of the Princess Royal of Arendelle is unfathomable, and the relationship between Princess Anna and the legendary Pirate King is unclear. It may not be a good thing to act rashly. If we anger the Pirate King, I'm worried." The old adept standing in front of him chuckled and shook his head. "Loka, you still don't understand the crux of the matter. Our trip to Arendelle is not to let you compete with the second prince of the Falcon Kingdom and find a way to marry Princess Anna. Actually, our most important task is not to find a way to marry Princess Anna, but to prevent the second prince of the Falcon Kingdom from marrying Princess Anna." "You're right. The Pirate King can't be easily offended, but if we can disrupt the second prince of the Falcon Kingdom's marriage proposal, it's not impossible to gain his favor. Your purpose this time is to make the other party fail, and it doesn't matter if you use some dishonorable means." I heard that His Royal Highness the Second Prince of the Falcon Kingdom has a messy private life, and there are some unclear rumors about his father's secret lover. What you need to do now is to seize this point and completely destroy his image in the hearts of Princess Royal and Princess Anna. As for the marriage proposal, it's just a slogan. The Duke of Thornflower also knows that we are far away from Arendelle, and it's difficult for Princess Royal to choose us in all aspects. We're here to cause trouble. For this reason, it doesn't matter even if we use a little underhanded means. We're here to fight with His Royal Highness the Second Prince of the Falcon Kingdom to reduce the other party's image in the hearts of the two princesses of Arendelle. The old wizard's eyes were full of another kind of wisdom, and he directly and clearly told the young man everything he needed to do. Destroying the image of His Royal Highness the Second Prince of the Falcon Kingdom was definitely much easier than winning the heart of Princess Anna. The young nobleman nodded, but he was still a little uneasy because he felt that the Second Prince of the Falcon Kingdom was not so easy to deal with. The other party might not be willing to see him come to Arendelle. South Coast, Raging Sand Island. The half-elf first mate held the information in his hand and couldn't help but frown and murmur, "The Second Prince of the Falcon Kingdom? He's really looking for trouble." Bang. He threw the information on the table heavily and then said in a deep voice, "Men, prepare the warship. It looks like we're going to teach the Falcon Kingdom a little lesson." He actually dared to propose to Princess Anna of Arendelle. This news had not yet been sent to Soren, but it had already caused an uproar among many pirate leaders. This kind of thing was a provocation to them, because in the eyes of these pirate leaders, Princess Anna was undoubtedly Soren's woman. The relationship between Mordor City and Arendelle was getting closer and closer. The most important thing to maintain this relationship was the personal relationship between Sir Soren and Princess Anna. No matter what the outside world thought, no matter what the truth was, these pirate leaders insisted that these two people were very close. Arendelle was the closest ally of Mordor City. The pirate leaders valued their own interests and the interests of Mordor City. If Princess Anna really married an outsider, and the damned Second Prince of the Falcon Kingdom proposed successfully, then the relationship between Mordor City and Arendelle would gradually drift apart. This would affect the common interests of all pirate leaders, and Mordor City would also lose an important ally. This kind of thing was absolutely intolerable for the half-elf first mate who had always been ambitious. So, after receiving this news, he immediately decided to do it himself. He had to teach the other party a lesson. Mordor City, Northern Tower, Arendelle. The alliance of the Golden Triangle must not be destroyed by any external factors. The mainland area was already very chaotic, and the order of the coastal area was completely maintained by these three forces. The Yellow Robe. By now there were some things that even Soren didn't know, but the pirate leaders under him would take the initiative to protect the interests of Mordor City. Princess Anna must not marry outside. Anyone who dared to propose to Princess Anna and tried to destroy the alliance of the three would be regarded as an enemy by these pirate leaders. Chapter 569. Mordor City. This was a very calm day. The moon was bright, the stars were sparse, and the breeze was gentle. After the sky darkened, people who had long been accustomed to the regular life here returned to their homes. Even the pirates who had always been unruly now just had a drink in the tavern and returned to the barracks. It had to be said that the environment could really change a person. In a holistic environment, those who could not integrate into the group would eventually be eliminated, and the rest would gradually adapt to the rules here. It could be said that Mordor City had changed many people's camps. Whether they were good or evil, many pirates of the Chaos Camp had at least become neutral camp, and some even directly changed to the lawful camp. This was the power of the rules. When the children born in Mordor City grew up, they would naturally adapt to the order because of the environment. It was just like how adults taught children not to do illegal things from an early age. Perhaps there would still be some criminals, but most of them would still be law-abiding citizens. Soren was changing all of this. This change may not be obvious enough, but it fundamentally affected Mordor City. "You're back." The sister's smile was still so gentle. She gently put down her little nephew who had just been coaxed to sleep, and then smiled at George. "Why are you sweating? You're still dirty. Take off your clothes and go take a bath." George was now a reserve officer and there was a hint of majesty in his body, but when he returned home he still looked like a big boy. He smiled and said, "I was drinking in the tavern and practicing with a friend." "Okay. I'll change now." Just as he took off his clothes, suddenly George seemed to hear something. He couldn't help but tremble. Then he instantly held the long sword at his waist and said to his sister in a deep voice, "Stay at home and don't walk around." There's a situation outside. During this period of time, George's strength had increased significantly. George's strength had obviously improved, and the movement from the opposite street just now had alerted him. Mordor City was heavily guarded. However, as a reserve duty officer, he immediately put on his clothes, picked up his sword, and leaped up. He then rushed over the rooftop. Other figures could be seen on the roof. Many of them were garrison officers and reserve officers. They all took shortcuts and approached from the rooftops in a straight line. Rumble. A violent explosion was heard. In the south of Mordor City, there was a sudden burst of fire, followed by several houses in succession. They could vaguely hear the cries of civilians. Then came the sound of hurried and orderly footsteps. The patrol team heard the commotion and quickly approached. This way. A blood-curdling scream rang out. George instantly pulled out his sword and called out to several of his colleagues beside him. Then they quickly dispersed and rushed over. Who was so bold? How dare he cause trouble in Mordor City? He had to teach these guys a lesson. Most of the reserve officers were middle-grade professionals. More than a dozen figures quickly approached, but when they saw the enemy in front of them, they couldn't help but gasp. Devil. Although this was the first time they had seen demons with their own eyes, they still recognized these monsters the moment they saw them. An ugly, tall, and dangerous demon. The atmosphere of fear spread, and George found that his colleagues around him were a little pale. They seemed to be affected by the enemy. However, he still gritted his teeth and rushed up with his sword. Seeing him move, his colleagues who had been training with him immediately began to cover him. Whether the enemy was a demon or not, since they dared to cause trouble in Mordor City, they must pay the price. Laboratory. Gloria, who was analyzing the golem factory, suddenly stopped. Standing next to her was Fallen Witch. At this moment, her face changed slightly and then she suddenly said, "Demon. A demon has sneaked into Mordor City." The light of teleportation appeared. The next moment, the figures of two witches appeared in the sky above Mordor City. At this time, many places in Mordor City were already on fire. There were priests rushing out of the half-elf temple, and the high priest soon appeared in front of them. A demon has sneaked in. There are only small fries nearby. The high priest frowned and looked around. He said to Gloria and Fallen Witch beside him, "I will open the psionic energy field later and then connect with you. I feel that a high-grade demon has sneaked in here, but I can't determine its location yet." The battle broke out. With just a glance, Gloria found that many of the enemies were low-grade demons. They seemed to be completely destroying the city. Now that the garrison army and the priests had rushed over, it should not be difficult to deal with them. Not good. As if thinking of something, Gloria's face suddenly changed. "Vivian." Rumble. An amazing explosion suddenly came from Soren's mansion. Gloria's face turned pale instantly. She directly teleported over there and said anxiously, "Vivian." It's Vivian's side. The defensive alert circle has been broken. The fire soared into the sky. When the three of them arrived, there were already many demon corpses in front of them. Lulu's petite body landed on their side, holding a cold dagger in her hand. Next to her was a dead demon. The little cat girl's arm was dripping blood. She looked a little flustered and said, "Demon. A very powerful demon. Vivian is awake. The demon is inside and so is Vivian." Meow. Fallen Witch glanced at the corpses on the ground. Suddenly she landed next to the corpse of a bald man. She kicked the corpse with her foot, then took a badge from the corpse's clothes and murmured, "Fear Church. Not good. This is the church that serves the Fear Lord." Gloria and Fallen Witch naturally knew about Vivian's hidden identity. So now the believers of the Fear Church and the demons of the Abyss appeared at the same time. Even an idiot could guess that they came for Vivian. Soren had just left not long ago. These believers of the Fear Church and the demons began to move. Obviously, they had been lurking near Mordor City in advance. This discovery made Gloria feel uneasy. She was worried about Vivian's current situation. Found it? A strange light suddenly appeared in the high priest's eyes, and then he said in a deep voice, "Over there. A greater demon. A legendary priest. And? Not good. Someone summoned the Slayer." Chapter 570. Ho ho ho. George leaned against the corner and gasped violently. In front of him was a killed demon, next to his injured colleagues and a dead pirate captain. For a long time, George had some prejudice against pirates, which was roughly equivalent to the kind of, "it's easy to change mountains and rivers, but it's hard to change one's nature." Therefore there were also various factions within the city of Mordor. The power of the pirate faction was naturally very strong, but the officers and soldiers selected from the half-elves were also very good. The two sides had competed a lot during this period of time. The dead pirate captain was George's opponent. But just now, this man covered in scars faced the devil's attack head-on in order to cover their flank attack. The huge force shattered his bones, and before George and the others could rescue him, the man died under the devil's hands. Even at the moment of death, this fierce man who had been drifting on the sea for half of his life still used his last strength to pierce the demon's throat, which allowed them to successfully kill the demon. A powerful demon. They had never faced such a dangerous enemy. Although they had heard of demons and devils in other parts of the continent, this was the first time in the territory of Mordor. George slowly stood up and came to the dead comrade. He slowly knelt down on one knee and then closed the other party's eyes. Beside him, there were wounded people who helped each other stand up, calling for the priest to come, and at the same time treating others nervously. The friendship between men was sometimes so simple. A moment ago they might still be rivals of different factions, but now they were truly comrades worth trusting. May your soul rest in peace. George slowly clenched his long sword, glanced at the dead pirate captain in front of him, and then turned and walked out of the alley. The battle was not over yet. No matter who came, Mordor City had long become his new home. In order to protect his home, he was willing to fight until the last moment of his life. The peaceful and orderly life here must not be destroyed by others. Even a powerful demon could not affect the fighting spirit in his heart. Crossbowmen, get ready. The angry roar of the garrison officer came from the side, accompanied by neat footsteps. All the crossbowmen equipped with military crossbows appeared. The figures of the drow warriors leaped on the roof. The profession level of these drow warriors was much higher than ordinary people. Their natural racial advantage allowed them to quickly support various battlefields. A muffled dragon roar could be heard. The huge figure of the Quetzalcoatlus appeared in the night sky. It swooped down and grabbed the figure of a demon, then directly threw it down from a height of hundreds of meters. It was as if he felt some kind of summoning. The two-footed pterosaur suddenly became excited. It let out a high-pitched dragon roar and then rushed towards the city lord's mansion. Form the formation. All troops, get into formation. Don't scatter. Follow your training. Evacuate the civilians. Evacuate the nearby civilians. A series of angry roars rang out. Many of the pirates who had been on the battlefield for a long time had now grown up. As the High Priest's psionic force field expanded, they quickly received orders to evacuate the surrounding civilians, and at the same time, split up and surrounded the demons. Anyone who started a war in Mordor City must pay the price. Since these demons dared to come, then none of them could leave alive. The Quetzalcoatlus flew across the sky. Gloria was surprised for a moment before she quickly followed. The Fallen Witch was casting a fire protection spell because the area before her eyes was about to turn into a sea of fire. A faint roar could be heard. When the two legendary witches arrived, the battle in front of them was almost over. Vivian's figure was suspended in midair. The Quetzalcoatlus slowly landed in front of her. The little girl held a dark magic sword in her hand, as if even the surrounding space was distorted. Sword of Destruction, legendary spell. The body of a higher demon, the body of a slaughterer, and a seriously injured legendary priest. A mysterious demon tattoo appeared on the side of Vivian's young face. A black princess dress seemed to be wrapped in some kind of powerful force. Behind her was a pair of demon wings that had grown much larger than before. Her expression was very calm. There were already many demon bodies around the little girl. She turned her head and glanced at Gloria, who had rushed over. Then she put the sword of destruction on the legendary priest's neck and said in a majestic voice, "Surrender, or die." The legendary priest struggled. Vivian frowned slightly, waved the sword of destruction gently, and a head flew up. The blood was evaporated by the distorted space. The legendary spell Sword of Destruction, which was known as a divine artifact, was not something a priest could easily withstand. The corpse was dissipating. This was the power of space fragments, which directly disintegrated any matter that could not pass the judgment. The little girl killed a legendary priest as easily as crushing an ant. After confirming that there were no enemies nearby, she landed lightly in front of Gloria. "Vivian?" Gloria's expression was a little surprised and murmured, "Are you okay?" Very powerful. The legendary spell was so easy to use. At this moment, Gloria even suspected that Vivian was stronger than the most powerful spellcaster she had ever met, the Northern Witch. A high-grade legendary spellcaster. Incredible power. Vivian's changes were no less than Soren's. I'm fine. The little girl shook her head gently, then glanced at Gloria and said slowly, Brother went out for something, right? Gloria nodded slowly and hurriedly said, Yes. But he will be back soon. Vivian shook her head, and a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Then she gently landed on the back of the Quetzalcoatlus. She looked at Gloria calmly and whispered, I'm leaving. This is my fate. I can't always run away. I always want to rely on my brother. I am the Witch of Fear. Fate has decided that I must face all of this personally. Please tell my brother. When it's time to end all of this, I will return to him. Now, I have to face my own fate. Speaking of this, the little girl's voice became smaller and smaller, and finally she murmured in a voice that only she could hear, whether it's Vivian or Lillian. Our fate is to defeat him to have a future. Let's go. Vivian, you can't run away anymore. Brother said that there will be a bigger disaster coming. Only by defeating our own fate can we stay by Brother's side and face everything. We are the twins of fear. Let those devils and believers tremble in fear under our name. Chapter 571. The huge body of the Quetzalcoatlus rose into the air. Looking at Vivian's determined expression, Gloria didn't know what to say for a while, and many words were stuck in her throat. At this moment, Vivian actually brought her a little pressure, which had never happened before. She felt the aura of the mentor's class on Vivian. She couldn't believe that Vivian had advanced to the advanced legendary strength of the Eye of the North. At the same time, there was a power of fear spreading. Although it was not directed at her, it still affected her a little. The wind whistled. Vivian's attitude was so determined that when the Quetzalcoatlus rose into the air, Gloria couldn't even stop her. Meow. But at this time, a petite figure suddenly rushed out, grabbed the tail of the Quetzalcoatlus, and then jumped on the back of the Quetzalcoatlus with amazing agility. She grabbed the skin of the Quetzalcoatlus and said anxiously, Don't leave Lulu. Meow. Meow. Lulu wants to go too. Lulu can help you. Meow. Lulu can fight 10 people by herself. Vivian's expression froze for a moment, then a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth and said softly, Okay. Then take Lulu with you. Hold on tight. The Quetzalcoatlus's huge body rose into the sky. Lulu's excited meow could be faintly heard in the air, and the wind blew the sand and stones around. Fallen which came over at this time and said slowly, Aren't you going to stop her? If Soren comes back and doesn't see her, he may be very angry. Gloria shook her head gently and said, It's useless. If she insists on going, we can't stop her at all. Besides, I left a magic mark on them so I can track their location at any time. After all, she was an orthodox northern witch. When she saw Vivian's determined attitude, Gloria immediately prepared a backup plan. Where are they going? Fallen which stared at the Quetzalcoatlus in the sky and said in a low voice, Soren values her more than his own life. I'm afraid that something bad might happen. Gloria's expression was solemn as she murmured, It doesn't look like he's leaving this plane. As long as we don't leave this plane, there won't be any problems. She's probably preparing to deal with the Terror Church. I'll arrange for people to spread out now. We should be able to get news of her soon. Vivian was not a reckless little girl. Gloria had taught her for a long time, so she could clearly feel that Vivian was very similar to Soren. Make a plan and act. If Vivian really intended to face the Dreadlord personally, then the first thing she would deal with would be the Church of Fear. The demigod vampire had fallen. The interior of the Church of Fear had probably changed again. Looking at what Vivian said just now, the little girl seemed to want to recover this church as the Witch of Fear. With her current ability as a high-grade legendary spellcaster, it would not be difficult to remove the Church of Fear in the material plane. As long as she didn't leave the material plane to go to a place like the Abyss, no one could stop her even if she encountered any trouble. This was also the reason why Gloria was relieved to let her leave. Young birds would always spread their wings and fly high one day. Soren was an eagle soaring in the sky, so Vivian was probably not much worse. The battle in Mordor City continued. Edu pressed his arm and stood up slowly. The priest next to him quickly arrived. With the brilliance of the divine spell, the broken arm was reattached. Most of the demons had been dealt with, but there were still many places in Mordor City that were on fire. The nature of demons was to destroy, and they caused great chaos here. The casualties were much more serious than expected. Ordinary people were too weak when fighting against demons. The gap in basic attributes could easily cause a crushing effect. 3 of Idu's companions had already died in battle. Fire and smoke. The city garrison had begun to put out the fire, and there were cries of the old, weak, women and children. The half-elf garrison had more casualties, and the battle-hardened pirates had fewer casualties. But at this moment, everyone's face was dignified. Scattered battles still broke out in some corners. The appearance of the demons was unsettling. There was a sense of crisis. Idu returned to his residence after dealing with his injuries. The next thing would be taken over by the garrison. They were busy until dawn the next day before everything was dealt with. His sister's eyes were a little red. On one hand she was worried about his injuries, and on the other hand she didn't sleep all night. Idu also didn't sleep all night. When he got up the next day he could see the burned houses on the opposite street. Although the security team had settled the civilians, many people were a little uneasy. He had long heard that there were traces of demons and devils in other places on the continent. Now demons also appeared in Mordor City. It seemed that the situation was not so optimistic. The efficiency of Mordor City was very high. The next day all the order had been restored and the burned houses were being rebuilt. Idu found that their training tasks were much stricter than before. Many of his colleagues' expressions were quite dignified. They gritted their teeth and silently endured more difficult combat training. A sense of crisis. When they formed a sense of identity with Mordor City, a new sense of crisis also appeared. Unlike the last time when the orcs attacked, this time they wanted to protect all of this with their own strength. The powerful strength of the demons gave them a lot of pressure. Pressure may knock a person down, but it may also force out more potential. Although they suffered heavy losses. But they also won the final victory. No demons who offended Mordor City left alive. So all these sacrifices were worth it. There were faint cries and prayers in his ears. The soldiers who died in battle were being buried by priests, praying for their souls to rest in the glory of God. Idu lifted the 300-pound stone lock and exercised silently. His burly body was full of sweat. Night fell. Since being promoted to a reserve officer, Idu seemed to have developed the habit of drinking a drink every day, but today he didn't have such an idea at all. The tavern seemed a little cold. The tired colleagues returned to their residence silently, preparing for tomorrow's difficult training. A crisis. A massacre. The city of Mordor had changed a little, but many people felt this small change. They put away some of their past laziness and began to work harder with a more serious attitude. This was Mordor City. This was their new home. Chapter 572. The second day of the Golumba Arena. When Sauron walked out of the lava tavern he could clearly feel that the atmosphere here was a little tense. Many demons left in a panic and occasionally he could see the caravan of Ross demons and night witches leaving in a hurry. There was a place to inquire about information in the tavern. After throwing a few calamity coins to a ferocious-looking Anababa, Sauron quickly got the information he wanted to know. The demons were defeated again. The infernal demons attacked the rear of the 10,000 Abyss Plain in the first layer of the Abyss, and the real elites of the devils pulled out several military fortresses of the demons in succession. What was even more disturbing was that the Blood Battle Fortress was transformed into a place of order by the devils. At present, 2 of the 8 infernal demons were stationed in the Blood Battle Fortress. According to the past, many demon lords should not sit still when encountering this kind of thing. Whether it was the Succubus Queen, Mechanut, the Knoll King Yeenagu, the Tauren King, Buffet, the Undead Lord, the Balrog King Womians, etc., these demon lords should frantically reinforce the front line and even send their elite forces to recapture the lost territory. But the problem now was just the opposite. All the demon lords did not move, and they had no intention of reinforcing the first layer of the abyss. What was even more strange was that the devils also began to search for the defensive line. They clearly had a great advantage, but they did not pursue and destroy these demons. Instead, they retreated near the Blood Battle Fortress. It was said that the scale of the blood battle during this period was the smallest in hundreds of years. All the small-scale conflicts broke out, and many powerful demons and devils stopped moving. After hearing this news, the first reaction in Sauron's mind was the Avatar crisis. The blood battle was temporarily suspended. Because of the outbreak of the Avatar crisis, the scale of the blood battle was directly reduced to a small group battle, and the main forces of both sides began to turn their eyes to other planes. The plane barrier had not weakened yet, but Sauron could feel that it was much easier to cross planes than in the past. When the Avatar crisis really began, the plane barrier would be shattered by the energy storm. At that time, even a timid demon could slip into other planes. The battle in the Golumba arena continued. This was the third level of the bottomless abyss. If they wanted to reach here, they would have to destroy the second level. Therefore, the demons were not afraid. It was a gray day. When Sauron stepped onto the Golumba arena again, the demons in the audience immediately howled in excitement. Sauron! Sauron! The Beheader Sauron! 2 battles. Sauron had accumulated a lot of popularity here. Even the nearby demons had heard of the rising flaming demon gladiator. If Sauron advanced to become a flame demon, then it was very likely that demons would submit to him. A demon's thoughts were that simple. In order to avoid becoming slaves, weak demons often hoped to become subordinates of powerful demons. After all, subordinates had a much higher status than slaves. However, this required a Styx contract. The contract had a lot of restrictions on demons. The contract that was really effective in the Abyss was the Styx Oath. Even demons could not easily violate it. Many mortals signed ordinary contracts with demons, but the end result was quite miserable. The demons directly tore the contract and killed the other party. The Styx Oath was one of the oldest contracts. In the Abyss, many subordinates of legendary demons directly used the Styx Oath to maintain their relationship. They worshipped the strong. This was the nature of demons. Otherwise, there would not be succubus maids knocking on the door in the middle of the night in Sauron's room. It seems that our beheader Sauron is very popular. The goblin fiend warlock smirked as he looked around. Then he stood on the high platform of the arena, and an excited smile appeared on his face as he shouted, "Today will be an extremely exciting battle. Because today is the Chaos Battle. Later there will be 8 powerful gladiators on the stage at the same time. They are all terrifying warriors. Only the last person alive can win. Chaos Battle." Hearing the voice of the goblin demon warlock, the demons in the audience cheered enthusiastically. Their chaotic nature made them like this battle mode the most. A chaotic battle of gladiators. No one could predict who the final winner would be. Next. The goblin demon warlock saw that the atmosphere in the arena had been stirred up. He was quite proud and said loudly, "Let's welcome our first contestant. Mind Flayer Longs." The heavy iron gate rose and a strange creature in a dark robe floated out. It was covered in a powerful psionic force field and had a trace of demonic aura. Its face looked like a humanoid octopus monster with 4 disgusting tentacles. Its skin was a strange lavender color and it was covered with some kind of mucus. Mind Flayers were hermaphroditic creatures. Their nature was like that of drows and spiders. In their long history they were extremely violent and cruel. To deal with their enemies, the Mind Flayers would tear the enemy's head and steal their brains. But it seemed that this was not all. The Mind Flayers preferred to use their psionic power to control the opponent's thoughts and turn them into their slaves. Adult Mind Flayers were quite dangerous. This was one of the most hated enemies in the Underdark, and this Mind Flayer from the Abyss was undoubtedly even more terrifying. Mind Flayers had an innate +8 intelligence bonus, and it required an extremely strong will to deal with them. Sauron frowned slightly. With the appearance of the Mind Flayer, the entire arena quieted down. The expressions of the demons were more interesting. Some were disgusted and some were curious. This kind of monster was not very common in the Abyss. The goblin demon warlock was very satisfied with the expressions of the audience. He looked around and continued, "Now let's welcome our second contestant. From the depths of the Abyss, 10,000-eyed demon Abyss. Beholder Grodok. Rumble." The iron gate slowly rose and a huge beholder floated in the air. Its single ferocious eye looked at everyone, and its bloody mouth seemed to be able to swallow everything. The demons were in an uproar. Obviously, the contestants in the arena today were beyond their expectations. The goblin demon warlock looked quite proud. He continued to speak in an excited tone, "Next is our third contestant. Frost Giant Urgle. Rumble." Heavy footsteps sounded, and the whole ground seemed to be trembling slightly. A mutated giant of more than 5 meters tall slowly walked out. It was wearing simple armor and held a metal mace that weighed more than 1,000 pounds in its hand. The whole arena was in an uproar. This time the goblins were really generous. Almost all the gladiators that came out were quasi-legendary and above. Chapter 573. Giants were not born with high intelligence. The frost giant in front of them seemed to be affected by the chaotic will of the bottomless abyss. After it entered the arena with a huge mace, it immediately locked its target on the similarly huge beholder. It did not even wait for the battle to begin before it roared and rushed over. This guy's tenacity and resistance were a little scary. Although it had the strength of a half-legendary, it should be the most powerful among all the gladiators in terms of explosive power. Even Beholder might not be able to withstand one or two of its attacks. Sauron was in the form of a flaming demon. If he was hit by the frost giant's mace, he would be close to death. Hee hee. Looks like our frost giant. Urgel can't wait to taste the blood of the enemy. The Goblin Fiend Warlock was not surprised at all by the frost giant's action. The nature of demons was chaotic. The power of the bottomless abyss affected everyone. Anyone who stayed in the abyss would have an invisible test of will. If the test of will did not pass, they might be affected by the chaotic will of the abyss. This was like any intelligent creature that entered the Elysium. They would have to go through a test of pleasure every day. Ordinary people would be affected by the chaotic will of the abyss. Once they entered the Elysium, they would not want to go out for the rest of their lives. Only a strong enough will could resist this characteristic of the realm. Boom. The heavy mace did not hit Beholder, but it smashed a hole in the ground. Beholder had psionic energy similar to an anti-gravity force field. It could directly float and fly at low altitude. It dodged the attack of the frost giant and instantly shot out a ray of light. The Mind Flayer stood aside and watched coldly. It even retreated to a corner. These Mind Flayers were quite cunning and cruel. They also had the ability to control the thoughts of others. It also required a strong will to resist. If there were no surprises, no one would fight it first. Sauron also retreated. The strength of Beholder and the frost giant, Urgel, was not very different. One had all kinds of natural abilities and the other had a violent bloodline. They could fight for a while. Don't worry. The Goblin Fiend Warlock let out a strange laugh. He waved his hand and opened another gate. He said in a sharp voice, "The next one is the four-armed snake demon, Karkin. It's a prisoner of the demon lord Miamid, Calamity Coin. If it's lucky enough to survive, it might be able to regain its freedom." Rumble. A heavy iron gate opened, and a snake demon with a naked upper body and four arms holding long swords appeared. It stared at everyone with its turbid reddish-yellow eyes and then approached Sauron. A snake demon that was proficient in multiple attacks. Using four long swords at the same time to fight, it seemed like this guy was about to advance into a six-armed snake demon. Its target was Sauron. The Goblin Demon Warlock looked at the boiling arena in front of him and waved his hand to open several gates. Then some other high-grade creatures appeared. There were beasts from the outer planes and other intermediate and high-grade devils. They were all enemies with a monster level of 15 and above. Next, the Goblin Fiend Warlock took a deep breath and laughed maniacally. "Let's welcome our last contestant." Thump, thump, thump. A huge vibration came. The largest steel gate under the Goblin Fiend Warlock's feet opened. The heavy footsteps made the frost giant stop temporarily. The four-armed snake demon was also careful not to get too close to Sauron because it also realized that a greater danger was approaching. There was dead silence in the arena. An invisible pressure shrouded everyone. The high-grade devils looked dignified, and some of the intermediate and low-grade devils were pale with fear. Dragon's Aura. A row of data appeared in front of Sauron. Affected by Dragon's Aura. Force Test of Will Immunity triggered. Test of Will Immunity passed. You resisted the effect of Dragon's Aura. Sauron's expression was quite dignified. Even he did not expect that these devils and goblins could play such a big hand. Although it could be said that there were as many legends as dogs in the abyss, they were also scattered in the hundreds of layers of the plane space. Most of the legends in a plane were at the level of the leader. Creatures like dragons even occupied the territory near their lairs. It seemed that the rumor about the relationship between the demon lord Miamid, Calamity Coin, and the abyss demon dragon was true. There were a lot of dragons here. Rumble. A huge monster of 5 meters tall and 20 meters long appeared in front of everyone. When it came out of the dungeon, Sauron's expression could not help but be stunned because the creature he saw was a bit strange. It was a dragon, but it did have a strong dragon's aura. Its head was also 70% similar to a dragon, but its body was a bit strange. The huge dragon creature in front of him had very thick forelimbs and hind limbs, which meant that it had amazing attacking ability. Its body was obviously different from other dragons. It looked more like an earth dragon. The most eye-catching thing was its dragon wings, which were only 2 meters long. It looked like 2 congenitally deformed wings. It was impossible for such dragon wings to support it to fly. The dragon in front of him looked like some kind of congenitally deformed variant. Its scales were close to dark red. Its characteristics were a bit like a red dragon but also a bit like a black dragon. It even had the ferocity of an abyss demon dragon. Its body surface temperature was very high. Sauron noticed that it would leave a slight scorch mark on the ground. Its heavy breathing was accompanied by a trace of flames, and the air was filled with a faint smell of sulfur. There was also a kind of magma-like burning breath. This was a deformed hybrid dragon. It had the blood of a red dragon and also the blood of a black dragon. Its living area should be near magma. It was basically immune to fire damage. Its dragon tail was quite strong. If you were hit by its tail, you would be seriously injured on the spot. According to the flames that appeared when it breathed, Sauron judged that its dragon breath was very strong. It was almost comparable to the most powerful red dragon among the 5 colors. The biggest flaw of the deformed dragon in front of him was its dragon wings. The dragon wings were congenitally deformed, so it could only live like an earth dragon. But, in terms of hand-to-hand combat ability on the ground, it was probably stronger than many adult dragons. Just at the first sight of the enemy, Sauron's mind was quickly analyzing its weaknesses and trump cards. Immunity to fire was the most troublesome thing. Sauron was not sure if his long sword could break its strong dragon scales. It looks like it. Sauron quietly moved his feet and secretly said, "The abyss dragon in front of me has the ability to fight at least 3 to 5 enemies. An adult dragon. Even if it was a mixed bloodline, its natural advantage was still very obvious." P.S. Futu's public WeChat account is ZhuXingFutu001. You can follow it. It will release plot information and extras regularly. Chapter 574. Very strong. A very powerful enemy. The challenge rating of the deformed dragon in front of them was estimated to be around 18, which meant that at least 5 well-equipped adventure teams with profession level 18 were needed to successfully kill it, and there might even be some casualties. Now there were a total of 8 players in the entire arena. In addition to this strange deformed dragon, there were a total of 7 gladiators. Among them, the frost giant could basically be ignored. It had been wildly chasing after Beholder, and its rationality had almost disappeared. Only the remaining 5 people could possibly kill this dragon together. But the problem now was that there was only one winner in the arena, and it was quite difficult for them to work together. A treacherous smile appeared on the face of the goblin fiend warlock, and it said in a sharp voice, "The last player is the hybrid magma dragon that lives in the lava volcano. It has the blood of the red dragon and the abyssal dragon. It is the pet of the great demon Lord Miamed Calamity Coin. Now, let's see who will win the final victory." Having said that, the goblin fiend warlock looked at Sauron in the distance. Among all the players in the arena, Sauron's strength should be in the top 3. After all, the Balrog was also a legendary creature comparable to the dragon. Obviously, Sauron was not far from the Balrog. However, with his strength alone, he may not be able to defeat the hybrid dragon in front of him. Thinking of this, he could not help but look forward to the final result. The demon Lord Miamed Calamity Coin had formed an alliance with an abyssal dragon. Dragons were inherently lustful, and the abyssal dragon had a wide range of preferences. It had many deformed species, but only a few could live to adulthood. The one in front of them belonged to the kind that was abandoned. Boom. The chaotic nature distorted the will of this hybrid dragon. After entering the arena, it immediately rushed forward at high speed and directly hit the berserk frost giant in front of it. It couldn't be helped. The frost giant was the largest and the easiest to attract the dragon's attention. The 5-meter-tall frost giant looked as if it had been hit by a train and was sent flying far away. The giant's size was a little small compared to the giant dragon, not to mention that the hybrid giant dragon's strength was suppressing. Dragon's breath. After severely injuring the frost giant, the mixed-blood lava dragon in front of him took a deep breath. Its chest was larger than that of an ordinary dragon. When it breathed, its whole body seemed to expand. Then, a wave of scorching dragon breath flames gushed out. The ferocious dragon swayed its head, and terrifying flames covered an area of more than 50 meters. As a mixed-blood dragon, its dragon breath had a wider range than the red dragon, and it lasted much longer. Dragon tail sweep. The strong dragon tail lashed out the moment the dragon breath ended, sending an enemy flying more than 10 meters away. The magma dragon rushed toward the frost giant at high speed, opened its bloody mouth and bit down on its head. With a crunching sound, the frost giant's head was bitten off in an instant. Instant kill. In just the first round of attacks, the frost giant died and the other 2 were injured. Although the magma dragon's chaotic nature affected it, its intelligence was not low. At first glance, it judged that the frost giant with a mace that weighed more than 1,000 pounds was the biggest threat to it. Even a dragon would not be able to withstand a few hits from such a heavy weapon. In addition, the frost giant's natural breath was very annoying to the magma dragon, so it was natural for it to be the first target. We must work together. Sauron realized this in an instant. Almost no one else present could fight against this dragon. If they did not work together, everyone would die here. Only if they worked together to kill the dragon first, the rest of the people would have a chance to survive. A wave of psionic power came. Unknowingly, several middle-ranked demons had appeared beside the Mind Flayer as meat shields. Upon closer inspection, the audience behind it was actually empty. Sauron's expression froze for a moment. Then he realized that these demons were all demons in the audience seats of the arena. They were directly captured by the Mind Flayer using mind control. It seemed that the Mind Flayer was preparing to use these demons as cannon fodder and meat shields. Sauron did not know if such a move was against the rules, but looking at the expressions of the nearby demons and goblins, it seemed that such a situation was allowed by them. In fact, according to the rules of the Golumba arena, if a demon came to the arena, it was equivalent to joining this death battle. With the chaotic nature of demons, there would occasionally be guys who felt that they were tired of living and directly jumped from the audience into the arena. This behavior was recognized in the Golumba arena. Obviously, those demons who came down were not voluntary. They were controlled by the Mind Flayer. Such a situation frightened the nearby demons, and they retreated one after another. They avoided the Mind Flayer as if they were avoiding the plague. They did not even have the mood to watch the duel. Now there was only one thought in their minds, and that was to not get close to the Mind Flayer. It was too dangerous. The cannon fodder was in position. After using powerful psionic energy to directly capture the demons in the audience as cannon fodder, the Mind Flayer immediately transmitted a message to the others in the arena. We must work together to deal with this dragon. Otherwise, no one can win against it alone. Everyone was going to die here. I'll control people and attract attention. You guys find a chance to attack. There was no time to discuss tactics. The powerful hybrid dragon had already pounced on the second gladiator. The demon cannon fodder charged. The Mind Flayer's enslavement ability was far beyond any other race. A Mind Flayer could control the minds of multiple slaves at the same time. Even after the death of a cannon fodder, it could immediately find new cannon fodder from the audience. In order to prove its sincerity, the Mind Flayer immediately let the demon cannon fodder charge forward with a probing attack at the same time. The first to respond was the Beholder. Because after the death of the Frost Giant, it was the second large target. It was easy to become the dragon's primary target. Rays of light shot out. The Beholder floated in the air with the help of psionic energy. Following the Mind Flayer, it directly tried to use spells to control the demons next to the audience as cannon fodder. The two major slave owners in the Underdark. Naturally, the Mind Flayers ranked first. They had once enslaved the entire Grey Dwarf race, and their ability to control minds was one of the few in the multiverse. However, the Beholders also had a large number of slaves in the Dark Zone. In just one round, these two evil creatures that were close to the legendary level controlled 7 or 8 demon cannon fodder. Although their strength was obviously much weaker than the gladiators, they could be used to attract the attention of the enemy and exhaust the opponent for a while. At this moment, the demons in the spectator seats were really unlucky. The opponents participating in the duel today were a little different from what they saw in the past. Occasionally, there would be battles where innocent people were injured, but those were just accidents. Everything that had happened today had been intentional. The Goblin Demon Warlock looked at everything in front of it with a strange expression. There was a playful smile on its face as if it had no intention of stopping it. Inside the Golumba arena. As long as you entered the arena, you would be considered to have joined the battle. It didn't matter if you jumped down on purpose, fell down by accident, or was controlled by someone. This was all in line with the rules of the Golumba arena. In the chaotic nature of the Goblin Demon Warlock, this death battle had obviously become more exciting because of the Mind Flayer and the Beholder's actions of capturing cannon fodder. The battle was still going on. The demon cannon fodder was consumed very quickly. Perhaps it was annoyed by these little bugs. The lava dragon could not help but take a deep breath again. But at this moment, Sauron's figure suddenly moved. He rushed to the dragon in front of him from the side. The demonic wings on his back flapped. He held the long sword with both hands at an amazing speed and pierced the dragon's chest where the dragon was spitting out dragon breath. On the other side of the arena, the four-armed Naga's expression was a little hesitant, but in the end, it went around the dragon from the other side. In terms of physical damage, the four-armed Naga was definitely more powerful than Sauron. It might even be more powerful than the Frost Giant. Among all the gladiators present, only it could cause huge damage to the dragon in a short period of time. Only by killing the dragon could they possibly become the final victors. Chapter 575. Rumble. The magma dragon's tail was covered with sharp bone spikes that looked like a meteor hammer. When it unleashed its draconic aura, a strong gust of wind blew. Not only did it break the spine of a cannon fodder who dared to block its path, it even smashed a dent in the sturdy wall of the Garuba arena. As a deformed mutated dragon, the magma dragon in front of him did not have the ability to fly. It usually lived like a land dragon. Normal dragons would exercise their hind limbs and wings more in their daily activities, so all the strong muscles were concentrated in this area. The deformed magma dragon in front of him lived like a land dragon, so its forelimbs were also very developed. Its back muscles were quite strong, and this strength extended to the dragon's tail. This was the dragon that Sauron had seen using Dragon Tail Sweep the most times, and it was also the most powerful dragon. A scorching dragon's breath was spat out. Sauron flapped the demon wings on his back that were getting bigger and bigger. He increased his speed to the limit in an instant, almost flying close to the ground at a low altitude. He brushed past the scorching dragon's breath in an instant, then he swung his sword and stabbed the magma dragon's chest. The dragon's breath touched Sauron's body. This flame that was enough to turn mortals into ashes only ignited his whole body. The dark red skin automatically ignited the flame, and a surge of raging fire awakened his own flame body. Pucci. The moment the magma dragon took a deep breath and spat out the dragon's breath, Sauron stabbed its chest. With the hot dragon's blood spilling out, a fire snake suddenly began to shoot out from its chest. The dragon's breath leaked out. The dragon's physiological form was special. The dragon's breath was sprayed out from its chest. Now that Sauron's sword pierced through its chest, when it suffered a certain degree of damage, the dragon's breath also sprayed out from the hole below. All of a sudden, the power of the dragon's breath, which originally covered a wide range, was reduced a lot. The dragon's breath and dragon's blood spilled on Sauron's body. The dark red dragon's blood was abnormally hot, like a red-hot soldering iron. If it fell on other people, their skin would be burned at once. However, when the dragon's blood fell on Sauron's body, it was like adding oil to the fire in an instant. In an instant, the fire on his body became more vigorous. The blood had a scorching breath. After igniting the fire on his body, it turned into a trace of power that penetrated his body. Uncontrollable restlessness and fanaticism. In an instant, the fire on Sauron's body doubled. He roared and slashed his hand. The wound became bigger and bigger, and more dragon's blood spilled on his body. This was a magma dragon. As a mutated hybrid dragon, its living habits were a little different from other dragons because it lived near magma. It was immune to fire. It had a flame dragon's breath. Its blood was as hot as magma, which was very deadly to any mortal. Sauron was a fire demon. He had advanced to the elite form and was only one step away from becoming a flame demon. He was also immune to fire damage. As the pre-demon form of the Baelor, fire was like an instinctive power for Sauron. Rumble. There was a violent explosion. Sauron's body suddenly burst out with flames, and then there was a crackling sound on his body. His body grew bigger and he was nearly 5 centimeters taller. The lava-like dragon blood splattered all over his body. His dark red demonic skin seemed to have been infused with some other power. The strange demon tattoo emitted a demonic red flame, and Sauron's body gradually changed. The demon horn on his forehead curved upward slightly, and it looked a little like the outline of a dragon's horn. From his cheeks to his earlobes, new demon tattoos appeared where the dragon blood was poured on his head. The sharp demon claws were dyed dark red. With the huge body of the magma dragon, the dragon blood spewing out almost covered Sauron's whole body. A row of data appeared in front of him. Attribute compatibility. Dragon blood baptism, effect triggered. Fire demon form advanced mutation. Magma dragon blood merged. Energy extraction. Energy fusion. Advanced mutation triggered. Fire demon form temporarily changed to flame demon form. Flame body, temporarily upgraded to flame body. You temporarily mastered Beheader Sword ability. You temporarily mastered Order, Deterrence ability. You temporarily mastered Soul Assimilation ability. You temporarily mastered Cleave ability. You temporarily mastered Attack First ability. You temporarily mastered Dual Wielding ability. You temporarily mastered Telekinesis ability. You temporarily mastered blasphemy ability? Roar. A roar suddenly reverberated in the arena. Amidst the crackling sounds of his bones, Sauron's figure seemed to have ignited and exploded all of a sudden. The area covered by his body of flames doubled, and the dragon blood that spilled on his body seemed to have been poured on him like gasoline. The heat wave of the impact was unbearable even for the demons in the spectator seats of the arena. Flame demon form. A flame shadow dodged from the sharp claws of the lava dragon, and then Sauron's figure flew into the air. The demon wings that were getting bigger and bigger flapped slightly. Sauron's whole body was shrouded in flames. Even his face could not be seen clearly. Only a human silhouette wrapped in flames could be seen. Flame demon. Flame demon. Sauron the Beheader has become a flame demon. As one of the most powerful demons in the abyss, the form of the flame demon had long been known to other demons, so Sauron's sudden mutation could not be hidden from anyone. Such terrible flames and the breath of this high-grade demon. They were sure that Sauron had become a powerful flame demon, a terrible demon who could defeat a dragon. Whirlwind slash. Sauron's pupils were like fire. He stared at the lava dragon in front of him. Suddenly he flapped his demon wings and swooped down from the air. Then in an instant he swung his sword toward the lava dragon's neck. Temporarily evolved into flame demon form. Whether it was his own ability or attributes, Sauron had been greatly improved. However, he also felt that the power that seeped into his body was being consumed bit by bit. This power came from the blood of the magma dragon in front of him, and not his own power. Therefore he needed more dragon blood. Only more dragon blood could continue to maintain his flame demon form. This dragon blood had the power of lava. For him, it was like a warrior suddenly drinking a bottle of giant strength potion. Chapter 576. Sword form beheading. The burning sword slashed toward the head of the magma dragon, but it was blocked by the dragon's back. The strong dragon scales effectively protected Sauron from the fatal blow. With the sound of metal hitting, he only slightly broke the dragon scales on the back of the magma dragon and did not even penetrate the muscle layer. This kind of injury was nothing for a dragon. Any physical damage that could not penetrate the muscle layer and attack the internal organs was difficult to pose a fatal threat to them. However, a stream of dragon blood splashed out. The dragon blood stained Sauron's body, and as long as it touched the fire on his body, it immediately ignited like gasoline and then turned into a more scorching fire all over the battlefield. The consumed power was recovering. Sauron could feel that as long as he succeeded in staining the dragon blood, the power consumed in the Balrog form could be recovered a lot. More dragon blood. He must have more dragon blood. Even if he transformed into the form of the Balrog, he could not completely suppress the magma dragon in front of him. He must ensure that he could maintain the power of the Balrog form to win the final victory. Roar. The magma dragon's painful roar sounded. Just as Sauron fought with the magma dragon, the four-armed snake demon also went behind it. This warrior with 4 arms and 4 long swords at the same time was simply a killing machine. Its speed was like a whirlwind compared to Sauron's. With the high-speed sprint of the snake tail, the 4-armed snake demon launched a spinning attack in an instant. The 4 long swords staggered and rotated at the same time and slashed the lower body of the magma dragon. The dragon's scales were broken by the amazing power of the snake demon, and then a bloody wound appeared. Dragon tail sweep. A huge roar came, and the 4-armed snake demon directly crawled on the ground like a snake sprinting. It actually avoided a fatal dragon tail sweep attack by a hair's breadth. The beam of the beholder hit the head of the magma dragon. The mind flayer seemed to have some concerns about Sauron's sudden change. It temporarily stopped the attack and just controlled the demon cannon fodder to rush forward. Raging flames surged. Sauron's figure rose into the air. The demon wings of the Balrog could support him to fly at a low altitude, which was a huge advantage for him because the biggest weakness of the lava dragon in front of him was that it could not fly. Its pair of deformed dragon wings were completely decorative. Decapitation. The scorching longsword slashed down again. When the magma dragon saw that it couldn't hit Sauron, it immediately rushed to the 4-armed snake devil beside him. At the same time, it opened its mouth and spat out a dragon breath at Eye Devil in the distance. Even in the face of multiple enemies at the same time, the magma dragon's powerful vitality and defensive ability that were unique to the dragon race still allowed it to be on par with it. Clang, clang. As the dragon's tail swept over, Sauron's figure was sent flying. A feint. The lava dragon in front of him knew how to trick him. It looked like it was attacking Eye Devil and Four-Armed Naga, but it was actually tricking Sauron into attacking it with its tail. Plop. Sauron's figure flew out and spat out a mouthful of blood. Facing the huge magma dragon, he rolled to avoid the opponent's attack, and then rushed to the position where the Four-Armed Naga hit the magma dragon at the beginning. The ground was full of hot dragon blood. The dragon blood burned as soon as it touched Sauron's flame, and then he flapped his demon wings again and flew into the air. The magma dragon was so angry that it roared. This time, it rushed to Eye Devil on the side again. Since Sauron did not dare to come down to fight with it, it attacked other enemies. With the natural advantage of the dragon's size and strength, no one in the entire arena could resist its attack head-on. Dragon blood. More dragon blood. The consumption of maintaining the Balrog form was huge. The power of the legendary level was not what his current form could provide. Sauron had to rely on the dragon blood to maintain the form of the Balrog. Rumble. Seeing that the magma dragon had forced her into a corner, Eye Devil finally had no choice but to use her life-saving ability, which was an instant short-distance teleportation. The huge charging force made the magma dragon directly hit the wall of the Golumba arena. This directly caused a corner of the arena to collapse, but it did not seem to be affected too much. It just shook its head a little and turned around to continue to charge at Eye Devil. Sauron was the most threatening physical attack it knew, and Eye Devil was the most threatening long-range attack it knew. What a strong resistance. This kind of violent collision did not make it dizzy. Under normal circumstances, almost all physical damage would not cause any obvious negative status effects. Boom. The magma dragon's body that was more than 10 meters long charged again. Seeing that it was about to rush over, the first to move was not Eye Devil, but the demons on the opposite side of the arena. They were all like frightened rabbits and dodged to the left and right. Perhaps the players in the arena did not notice the collision just now. However, the demon spectators saw that two of them were caught in the collapse and were directly submerged in a pile of rubble. This was a gigantic dragon. With its terrifying strength and huge body, it could directly smash open the city gate. Even the city wall that was not strong enough could collapse because of its attack. The magma dragon rushed over with a ferocious momentum, this time. The four-armed snake demon that was wandering on the side of the arena found an opportunity and rushed over in an instant and slashed the body of the magma dragon from behind. Bang! No one knew if the magma dragon had eyes on the back of its head. Sauron's attack was directly hit by the dragon's tail. Although the four-armed snake demon's attack hit the opponent, it was quickly swept away by the dragon's tail. Patter. The four-armed snake demon's body was directly slapped and smashed into the solid wall. Even the wall behind it had a slight crack. If the snake demon was not born with strong physical strength, it would have died. Another one was seriously injured. The suppression of the magma dragon's strength and size was too obvious. Sauron blocked its attack, but he was still sent flying and vomited blood. The four-armed snake demon's physique was probably not as good as his, so it was directly in a state of serious injury. Eye Devil was once again forced into a corner. Its huge body was quite cumbersome and didn't even have the ability to move on its own. As a huge meatball, it could only rely on its psionic power to fly at a low altitude. How could its speed be faster than the high-speed magma dragon? Opportunity. Just at the moment when the magma dragon sent the four-armed snake demon flying, Sauron once again perceived that this was an opportunity to attack. He instantly swooped down and slashed the enemy in front of him. However, at this moment the mind flayer that had been holding back began to move. It gradually approached the heavily injured four-armed snake fiend. In the mind flayer's turbid eyes, a demonic light of magic emerged. The four-armed snake demon's body stiffened in an instant, and then its expression gradually became dull. Chapter 577. Shrill screams echoed in the sky above the Golumba arena. Although Sauron flew down from the sky to rescue, the magma dragon still chose to ignore Sauron's attack and directly hit or even kill the beholder in front of it. With its wisdom, it knew that it had to kill these annoying little bugs one by one. The beholder was undoubtedly the easiest to kill. In terms of size and speed, the beholder could not escape from its attack range. The magma dragon's bloody mouth bit the beholder's body, and the terrible bite force tore off a piece of flesh from the beholder's body. As everyone knew, the bite force of dragons was quite amazing. The bite force of a Tyrannosaurus rex dinosaur could even overturn a car. As one of the most powerful dragon species, the terrible bite force of the magma dragon in front of them was estimated to be able to penetrate the armor of a tank. It directly bit the side of the beholder's body, biting off one of the beholder's eye roots on the spot. As a special life form, the eye roots were the most important physiological organ of the beholder, and also one of its biggest weaknesses. The pain of being bitten off here was similar to the pain of having one's genitals cut off. One could imagine how shrill the scream was. With an eye root and a part of its body bitten off, the beholder almost entered a state of near death on the spot. But just when the magma dragon was about to kill the beholder in front of it in one breath, it suddenly let out a shrill scream. Sauron directly stabbed the beholder from its back, which was close to the dragon's genitals. The second shrill scream was heard. Because of the direction of the attack, Sauron could not attack the vital parts that were fatal enough, and the +1 longsword in his hand, even with the power of his Balrog transformation, could not penetrate the muscle layer of the magma dragon and hurt its internal organs. So he directly chose the obvious vital part of the back of the magma dragon's body. For any flesh and blood creature, their reproductive organs were an important area. This was a life and death battle. There were no morals, no rules. From an absolute rational point of view, the reproductive organs in the back of the body were the only place that could severely injure the opponent and temporarily affect its movement, and even force it to go crazy because of the pain. Sauron was a rogue. In the past, when he encountered an opponent that was too strong to defeat, he did not mind using the following 3 methods to get rid of the opponent. Magma Dragon's eyes were almost completely red because of the congested blood. Regardless of whether it was a male or a female, Sauron's stab from this angle, and almost half of the sword's depth, would cause great mental pain to both male and female creatures. Eye Devil seemed to have gotten a chance to breathe. It tried to move its huge and injured body to the side. At this time, Sauron landed in front of it. His huge demonic wings flapped slightly as if he wanted to attract the attention of the lava dragon to protect the Eye Demon behind him. Eye Demon was touched, because it knew very few devils who would do such a thing. But in the next moment, its expression stiffened. Sauron suddenly turned around. With a 360-degree turn, he swung his burning long sword at Eye Devil, who was on the verge of death. It was a merciless attack that was mixed with immense strength. It was a one-hit kill. From Eye Devil's head to its lower body, a terrible sword mark ran through its huge eyeball in the center, almost cutting it in half. Its expression was still the same as before, with a trace of shock and disbelief. Eye Devil could not understand why the Balrog in front of it would save it from the bloody mouth of the lava dragon, and then turn around and kill it with a sword. Maybe this was the chaotic nature of demons. Sauron's move made the whole Galumba arena noisy. Many demons were excited by this sudden move. The Goblin Demon Warlock was also a little shocked and murmured, "What a chaotic demon. If you want it to die, why did you save it? Since you saved it, why did you kill it?" Sure enough, these demons are crazy. Sauron saved Eye Devil, and Sauron turned around and killed Eye Devil. Some people did not understand this and thought it was the nature of demons, but some thought it was normal. The demon in front of them made them feel more like a devil. The lava dragon seemed to be a little confused by Sauron's behavior, but this did not affect its determination to kill the enemy in front of it. A ferocious mouth was about to bite him. Sauron rolled to avoid it, and then rose into the air with the help of the demon wings. The lava dragon took a deep breath. Facing the incoming dragon breath, Sauron's eyes suddenly lit up. He realized that his opponent had made a fatal mistake. He was not afraid of the lava dragon's dragon breath at all. A surging flame dragon breath came out of the lava dragon's bloody mouth. The terrible flames could even melt steel, but all this was not enough to cause enough fatal damage to Sauron. The whistling of the wind sounded. Sauron directly rushed towards the terrifying dragon breath of the lava dragon. The enemy had made a fatal common-sense mistake. The dragon was always confident in the power of the dragon breath. It thought that Sauron would dodge the dragon breath, but it did not expect Sauron to rush towards the dragon breath and stab its bloody mouth with his sword. The result of the battle could be reversed in an instant. The overwhelming dragon breath shrouded Sauron's figure. Even if he was immune to fire damage, the dragon breath still had a lot of effect on him. A trace of panic appeared on the lava dragon's face. It seemed that it had just realized that its subconscious dragon breath had brought about a fatal threat to itself. But it was all too late. Zorro's figure rushed over with the dragon's breath, and then directly stabbed into the magma dragon's bloody mouth with his sword. It was a fatal blow. The blade of the sword pierced through the upper jaw, which was not protected by dragon scales, directly into the brain. Accompanied by a loud rumbling sound and the dust raised when the heavy object fell to the ground, the powerful magma dragon was actually killed by him just like that. And this fatal opportunity was created by the enemy for Sauron. The strong. The truly strong knew how to use any flaw to deal with the opponent. In terms of combat experience, the lava dragon might not encounter as much as Sauron in a year. After all, dragons often relied on their powerful strength to crush their opponents. The whole Galumba arena was dead silent. All the demons had a stunned expression on their faces, and then there was an uproar. Such a reversal of the situation made many spectators very excited. At this moment, Sauron used a flaw to deal with a powerful enemy, but he was now facing a difficult battle. That was to absorb the power of the lava dragon, or to use the soul assimilation ability of Balrog transformation, to extract a powerful legendary dragon soul. The latter was the legendary dragon soul. Adventurers prefer to call it the dragon crystal. Chapter 578. Dragon Crystal. This was what adventurers called it. Many mortals thought that the dragon crystal was dug out of the dragon's brain, but in fact this was just a rumor. The dragon's body was just an ordinary biological structure of flesh and blood. Although there were many valuable materials, in fact, it was not out of the basic range of living creatures. The dragon crystal had considerable power, but this power was not given by the dragon's flesh and blood, but came from the dragon's powerful soul power. There was only one way to create the dragon crystal. That was, at the moment of the dragon's death, with the help of the power of magic, it could be extracted and turned into a legendary soul crystal. The dragon crystal was a soul crystal. It was just that this was the most special and powerful kind of soul crystal. There were many ways to extract soul power, and Sauron was now in the form of Balrog. The dragon's soul power would dissipate very quickly, and the extraction of soul power must be done at the moment of the enemy's death. In the current state, Sauron mastered the ability of soul manipulation. Even without any gems, he could directly reshape the soul power of the magma dragon in front of him into a legendary dragon crystal. This was a crystal with great power, and it was of great value even to the gods. However, the price of extracting the soul power was that he would lose most of the enemy's power, and he could not rely on the power brought by the magma dragon to improve himself. The only good thing was that the dragon crystal was similar to a soul crystal, and it could also be directly absorbed. In other words, it was to store the soul power. If he intended to absorb it again, although the benefits might be reduced a little, he could still retain most of the power. The soul of the dragon was far stronger than that of other creatures. The value of the dragon crystal was not in direct absorption, but as a special material used to make the top legendary equipment, or as an important core of some artifacts. Sauron was faced with a choice. If he absorbed the power of the magma dragon, then he would not be able to get the dragon crystal, but he could advance to become a Balrog faster. However, if he used the soul assimilation to extract the dragon crystal, he would obtain a legendary special item. This item could be used to forge a divine artifact, or he could directly absorb the power within it, although there would be a little loss in doing so. Soul manipulation. Although Sauron hesitated for a moment, he quickly made a decision. It was quite difficult to obtain the dragon crystal through conventional means. Even if his body was a god, there was no way to obtain the dragon crystal when he killed the giant dragon. This was because his body did not have the divinity of death, soul, mystery, and he did not have the ability to master the soul summoning. Don't underestimate this spell-like ability. It was a soul spell above level 8. Even in the bottomless abyss, only the top demons could master it. The Balrog happened to be one of the powerful demons who mastered the power of the soul. Among the higher demons, there were only a handful who could play with souls and reshape them. There was a chance that this spell would fail because the soul contained endless mysteries. However, Sauron knew that the flame demons were one of the most special types of demons in the abyss. Their control over souls was naturally superior to other demons. Even the success rate of their soul manipulation was much higher than other legendary wizards. The probability of the spell failing was less than 1 in 10. A huge amount of soul power was extracted, and in Sauron's burning palm, a strange fiery red crystal appeared. The spell was a success. Sauron extracted the soul power of the lava dragon in front of him and reshaped it into a legendary dragon crystal. A surge of power flowed into his body. Because the soul power was extracted and reshaped into the dragon crystal, Sauron's absorption of power was greatly reduced. The formation of the dragon crystal could not be hidden from anyone. The legendary level spiritual light was as dazzling as a torch. The demons in the audience couldn't help but show a trace of greed because the dragon crystal was a very rare treasure even for demons. Even the goblin demon warlock on the stage had a trace of greed and shock on his face. In the bottomless abyss, Probably only the Balrog and the Balrog could extract the enemy's soul and reshape it so easily. A dragon crystal. The Mind Flayer's eyes burst out with dazzling light. Almost at the moment when Sauron finished casting the soul manipulation, it launched a mind control attack. Then the four-armed snake demon with a dull expression rushed over crazily. It had been controlled by the Mind Flayer. The dragon crystal had countless uses. For any profession, it was a treasure of inestimable value. Perhaps there were many successful dragon slayers, but less than 10% of them obtained a dragon crystal. For the Mind Flayer, whether it was the battle in the arena or the dragon crystal that Sauron had just condensed with the soul manipulation, it was worth it to kill the enemy in front of it at all costs. Sauron's figure trembled on the spot. Then, his expression returned to normal, but his eyes became extremely cold because a wave of soul power had collided with his will. A strong will. The Mind Flayer's face was a little pale because the mind control it had just sent out seemed to have hit an iron plate. An unbelievably strong mind. The heart of the Balrog in front of it did not seem like a demon, but more like a paladin or ascetic monk with a firm belief. My will is as strong as steel. Sauron stared at the Mind Flayer in front of him with eyes full of killing intent. He hated being controlled by the enemy the most. If charm could arouse his killing intent, then the mind control of the Mind Flayer made him burn with anger. The Mind Flayer must die. For a long time, Sauron had been tempering his will all the time just to deal with the situation in front of him. No one could control his mind. Facing the four-armed snake demon that had been controlled by the Mind Flayer and was rushing towards him like a madman, Sauron directly raised his hand and pointed forward, launching another powerful spell-like ability of the Balrog form. It was a seven-circle talent spell-like ability. The four-armed snake demon had been severely injured by the magma dragon, so the Mind Flayer could easily control its mind. Now it was rushing towards Sauron, and it was also affected by in an instant, and its whole body was stiff in place. A seven-circle spell. This was a high-level spell that even Sauron himself could not release. Now, in the Balrog form he did not even need to make too many casting movements and could easily cast it. The only drawback was that it could only be used once a day. Terrible flames appeared. Sauron was not in a hurry to kill the four-armed snake demon in front of him because the duration of was long enough. He swung his sword at the body of the magma dragon in front of him, and then let the hot dragon blood pour over his whole body. Dragon blood baptism. He needed more power to ensure that he could hold on until he killed the Mind Flayer. Chapter 579. Command, Intimidate. This should be one of the most crushing spells for low-grade creatures. Unless the target's willpower was substantial, the immunity test would depend on the target's HP. Any creature with less than 150 HP would be intimidated on the spot. The duration of the immunity test depended on the target's HP. The duration of the immunity test was dependent on the target's HP. The immunity test would last for 1 to 6 seconds. However, if an ordinary person were to be intimidated by the immunity test could last for at least half an hour. The four-armed snake demon was already seriously injured, and its life force might not reach more than 150. For someone like Sauron, 6 seconds was enough for him to slice the enemy into pieces. So this spell was often used by priests to deal with spellcasters. If luck was not very good, even legendary wizards with insufficient life force would be intimidated on the spot. As for the final result, naturally there was no need to say more. Of course, this was not the best spell for priests to use to kill legendary wizards. Instead it was the legendary command, Death. Only priests who had mastered the divinities of slaughter, death, and life could learn this legendary divine spell, directly erasing any creature with less than 100 life points. No matter what the opponent was, whether it was a legendary wizard or a giant dragon. As long as there was no immunity to this spell and the remaining life force was less than 100 points, it would be drained on the spot and then die in an instant. To some extent, if Sauron's body had mastered the divinity of slaughter, he could give this divine spell to a legendary priest. Moreover, he could also use it himself. This spell was equivalent to the lowest version of Seize Life and Death, a relatively fatal spell that could potentially turn the situation around. 6 seconds. The flame demon's innate spell ability was quite terrifying. The four-armed snake demon controlled by command, Intimidate had almost no chance of survival, so the Mind Flayer did not hesitate to choose to give up on it. When Sauron slashed at the four-armed snake demon, the Mind Flayer began to quickly cast a psionic protection spell on itself, and at the same time tried to control Sauron's mind again. Blood splashed. The fire on Sauron's body became more and more vigorous. After killing many enemies in a row, his creature level was about to increase. If he had not extracted the power of the magma dragon and condensed it into a dragon crystal, he might have reached a creature level of 19, or even directly become a flame demon. But Sauron was a man who acted with a plan. Naturally, he had his own backup plan. That was the blood of the magma dragon. As long as he killed the Mind Flayer in front of him, he would immediately collect the blood of the magma dragon. If necessary, he could transform into the fire demon form again. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it. How could he decide to use the soul assimilation technique to reconstruct a dragon crystal so quickly? Blasphemy. Telekinesis. Sauron's figure turned into a ball of fire and descended from the sky. The Mind Flayer's face was extremely pale. In the battle of mind control, every attempt to attack made it feel as if its head had hit an iron plate. It really could not imagine that a demon's conviction could be so firm. This almost tangible willpower made it completely lose the possibility of controlling the other party's thoughts. Without being able to control the enemy, the Mind Flayer's battle prowess would be greatly reduced. However, there were other demon spectators nearby. The Mind Flayer immediately changed its target and began attacking the spectators around it, wanting to catch a batch of cannon fodder to restrain Sauron's strength. Blood splattered. A middle-grade demon was controlled by the Mind Flayer and jumped down, but it was killed by Sauron in an instant. Another wave of demonic power. Sauron was almost victorious. The blood of the magma dragon was still abundant enough to maintain his fire demon form for a while. Facing the desperate counterattack of the Mind Flayer, Sauron was not in a hurry to kill the other party. Because he was gaining experience. The Mind Flayer could not control Sauron, and other spells were unlikely to defeat the powerful fire demon, so it tried to use a war of attrition to kill Sauron in front of it. It could be seen that its mind control ability was very strong. Few of those middle-grade and low-grade demons could pass its mind control test, so in the blink of an eye, 3 middle-grade and low-grade demons rushed down in a row, but they were quickly killed by Sauron. Demonic power. The psionic power of the Mind Flayer was rapidly consumed, but the power accumulated by Sauron was getting stronger and stronger. Very good. The demonic power accumulated in a short while was almost comparable to that of a middle-grade demon he killed in the Abyss Blood War. The Mind Flayer finally felt desperate. Because the racial talent was too high, it was difficult for the Mind Flayer to master high-grade spells after advancing into a spellcaster. Although they would become quite terrifying after advancing into a legendary spellcaster, if they had not crossed the threshold of legendary, the Mind Flayer still needed to use its natural ability to fight. This kind of mind control power had now been completely crushed by Sauron's powerful will. It's time to end this. Sauron realized that the experience gain had almost reached its limit. He raised his hand and a flame whip appeared in his palm, and then directly entangled the Mind Flayer in front of him. The pathetic power of a spellcaster. It was almost impossible for the Mind Flayer to break free from the control of the flame whip. The terrible fire burned on its body, and a shrill scream immediately sounded over the Golumba arena. Sword form, beheading. With a splash of blood, the hideous and ugly head of the Mind Flayer also flew up. Sauron glanced at the head that fell to the ground and directly stepped on it, crushing it. The Mind Flayer was one of the creatures he hated the most. This kind of creature that sucked the brains of other creatures as food to improve its own strength was difficult to gain the favor of others. A row of data appeared in front of him. Creature level increased to 19. My ability has been improved. Demon bloodline fusion mutation. Flame body effect increased. Spell-like ability, summon demon, effect increased. Spell-like ability, dominate demon, effect increased. Flaming demon, elite form advanced. Basic attributes have been improved. Energy mutation. Spell-like ability, fireball, has been increased to 5 times per day. Special insight. Demon bloodline fusion mutation. You have mastered the talent spell ability, blasphemous word. Ability insight. Demon bloodline fusion mutation. You have mastered the talent, weapon mastery, beheading sword. Ability insight. Demon bloodline fusion mutation. You have mastered the talent, attack first. Just a little more. After slaying the Mind Flayer in front of him, Sauron realized that he was not too far away from evolving into a flame demon. If necessary, he could directly extract the power of the dragon crystal and evolve into a flame demon. Dragon blood. He had to collect the dragon blood because even if he evolved into a flame demon, the dragon blood could provide him with additional strength and give him some bonuses. The dragon blood was like a strength potion to him. As long as there was enough dragon blood, he could continue to fight like a warrior who consumed the giant strength potion and berserk potion. Sauron. Sauron. Beheader, Sauron. As the last enemy was slain by Sauron, the demons in the audience cheered excitedly. Although this exciting battle of death involved many spectators, the entire battle greatly satisfied their chaotic nature. Without a doubt, Sauron's reputation would increase after this battle of death. Perhaps the nearby demons would know that a powerful beheader, flame demon had appeared in the Golumba arena. But, facing the cheers from the audience, Sauron had no intention of paying attention to them. He pounced on the corpse of the lava dragon in front of him, brandishing his sword and slicing its abdomen. This dragon probably couldn't be taken away by him. With the greedy nature of the goblins, it was impossible for them to let Sauron take it as a trophy. But, if he only collected some dragon blood, perhaps the goblins wouldn't dare to say anything. Chapter 580. Lava Tavern. Just as Sauron returned to his room with the winner's reward, a beautiful and flirtatious succubus maid immediately knocked on the door and whispered, "Your Excellency Sauron. There's a goblin outside who wants to see you." In just a few days, Sauron had won the respect of other demons with his strength. Demons only respected the strong, so Sauron's status in the Lava Tavern had skyrocketed. The most obvious change was that the succubus maids in the tavern began to call him, "Your Excellency Sauron," and "Your Excellency Beheader." Almost all the demons and evil spirits in the tavern who met him would bow slightly to express their respect for a high-level demon. Especially those evil spirits of the neutral camp. To be able to make them bow their heads to Sauron required some reputation. Therefore, it was conceivable how much reputation Sauron had recently gained in the Golumba arena. Goblin? Sauron frowned slightly. He quickly understood the ins and outs of the matter. This goblin was probably here for the dragon crystal in his hands. To be honest, Sauron was not worried that someone would come to snatch the dragon crystal. First of all, he had his own strength. Second, he had mastered advanced teleportation. Third, this was the goblin's territory. The reason why the Golumba arena could attract so many evil spirits was because the evil spirits knew that the goblins were sinister, cunning, greedy, and so on. However, they would not easily break their promises. The Golumba arena had its own rules. Sauron's current identity was rather special and eye-catching. It could even be said that not only could the goblins not blatantly take Sauron's dragon crystal, but they also had to protect the dragon crystal on Sauron's body. After all, many demons now knew that Sauron had the dragon crystal, and the evil spirits also knew that Sauron had the dragon crystal. After all, there were only a few who were willing to stand up and challenge a powerful Balrog. If someone challenged the order and laws of the Golumba arena for the dragon crystal, it would be a serious blow to the reputation of the goblins among the evil spirits and demons. The evil spirits would suspect that the goblins had attacked the contestants in the arena out of greed. It was very helpless. However, this was the current situation. In the abyss, power reigned supreme. On the contrary, it was rare to see people who kept their promises and contracts. The rise of the goblins was because they had won the trust of the neutral camp evil spirits and the lawful camp devils. The trust of the two directly affected the prosperity of the Golumba arena. Zorro thought for a moment, then stood up and said, "I'll go down later." Although he didn't know why the goblins came, it was definitely related to the dragon crystal. His main body was about to reach the third layer of the abyss, and this was the biggest reason why Sauron was fearless. As long as Sauron's main body arrived, even the demon lord Miamed Calamity Coin would not be a match for him. The demon lord of a small territory was at most a weak divine power, and might even be at the level of a demigod. The thing that really made Sauron afraid was the abyssal demon dragon that was allied with the demon lord Miamed Calamity Coin. This thing's challenge level was similar to the Baelor. When Sauron arrived at the bottom of the Lava Tavern, there were already many demon spectators gathered here. The goblin who appeared was Sauron's old acquaintance, the goblin demon warlock who was in charge of hosting the arena. The goblin demon warlock showed a trace of dissatisfaction when Sauron came down after a while. He said in an unhappy voice, "Your Excellency Sauron. I'm here for the dragon crystal in your hand. His Excellency the Demon Lord is also very interested in this dragon crystal." But goblins keep their promises. In exchange for the dragon crystal in your hand, His Excellency the Demon Lord asked me to bring a legendary material of equal value. The private property of the gladiators could be protected by the Galumba Arena. This was to ensure that the contestants who participated in the death arena would not return empty-handed for some reason. Otherwise, the Galumba Arena would not attract so many demons to participate in the arena. The Goblin Demon Warlock's voice was very loud, and it could even be said that he deliberately said it for the other demons to hear. Sauron frowned when he heard this. He did not even look at the item that the goblin proposed to exchange. He said in a deep voice, "I'm sorry. This dragon crystal is very useful to me. I'm afraid I can't use it for exchange." The Goblin Demon Warlock was stunned when he heard this. Then he put on a fake smile and even threatened, "Your Excellency Sauron. Although you are a powerful Balrog, carrying a dragon crystal with you is too conspicuous. I'm afraid it will bring you unnecessary trouble. Perhaps trading with us is the best choice. We came with sincerity. Please take a look at the material we have prepared for you." The Goblin Demon Warlock waved his hand gently, and soon a goblin follower came over. It was holding a small box in both hands, but it seemed to be a little difficult. When it came to Sauron, the goblin follower opened the box directly. Then, a dark stone that seemed inconspicuous appeared in front of the others. Sauron's expression froze for a moment, and the surrounding demons who were watching the show seemed to be confused as well. Some even thought that the goblin was trying to force Sauron to use a broken stone to exchange for the dragon crystal in his hands. However, at this moment, a neutral evil demon merchant suddenly exclaimed. It was a secondary Ross demon, belonging to the higher echelons of the abyss. At the same time, it was also a knowledgeable evil demon. "Demon stone?" it exclaimed with a voice full of surprise. "Oh my God! This is the legendary demon stone." The tavern was suddenly in an uproar. Some demons did not know what this stone was, but some who knew were shocked. If this seemingly inconspicuous black stone was really the demon stone, then its value would not be lower than the dragon crystal. Unfortunately, this stone did not have the aura of a treasure. There was only one way to determine its authenticity, and that was to use one's hand to weigh it. That's right. This was the only way to determine whether it was the legendary demon stone. Sauron signaled to the Goblin Demon Warlock in front of him. After getting the other party's permission, he reached out and picked up the seemingly inconspicuous black stone in front of him. It was abnormally heavy. A black stone that was only half the size of a human's palm actually weighed close to 50 kilograms. It really was the demon stone. This strange stone could only be found at the very edge of the bottomless abyss, close to the endless void. It was so small, but it contained an astonishing weight. This was the best material for making weapons. It was also one of the few materials in the entire multiverse that could make artifacts that did not come from the gods. The only pity was, there were not many top alchemists and blacksmiths in the entire multiverse who could smelt it. Chapter 581. Demon Stone. As for this special material, it had been briefly mentioned before. It was a material that was very small in size but very heavy in weight. It was the product of elemental obliteration. Elemental obliteration and elemental fission were the top alchemy technologies during the Arcane Empire. The former could obliterate elements to create all kinds of special materials, while the latter could generate a huge amount of energy to maintain the operation of the floating city. Within the multiverse there was a theory of infinity and infinity. Infinity referred to the vastness of the multiverse, and within the boundless void of the astral plane, there were many spaces that not even the gods were aware of. Even beyond the borders of the crystal wall system, there were many mysteries that not even the gods knew about. Therefore, even the gods would be in awe of the endless stars above their heads. The second theory of infinity was more difficult to explain with alchemy knowledge. The easiest way to explain it was to extend the scientific knowledge of his previous life. Planets, human bodies, cells, molecules, atoms, protons, electrons, neutrons, and so on. If someone had studied this knowledge, they would understand that there was a huge gap in everything in the world. This gap may be quite small for humans, and they could only barely observe it with the help of a microscope. However, in fact, this gap did exist. Note, the body of a legendary warrior changes on the cellular level. Elemental obliteration was a terrifying elemental collapse reaction. The particles inside the material, like molecules, atoms, and protons, were compressed and collapsed by energy. In the end, a violent obliteration effect was produced, and some extremely small but extremely hard and heavy materials were born. If this material was used to make a weapon, the power would be unstoppable. There were several such weapons in history, and almost all of them had terrible penetrating power. Even the bodies of the gods might not be able to withstand it. In terms of the level of the item, the demon stone, in Sauron's hand, was not a very advanced elemental obliterating material. The best elemental obliterating material was only the size of a fingernail, but it could weigh more than 1,000 kilograms. White dwarfs and neutron stars were similar elemental obliterating materials. On a white dwarf, the gravity could reach 180,000 times that of Earth. As for the gravity of a neutron star, it was even more difficult to estimate because the density of a neutron star had been compressed to a limit. If Earth was compressed to such a density, the diameter of Earth would only be about 22 meters. A neutron star was one of the few possible endpoints of a star at the end of its evolution after a supernova explosion due to gravitational collapse. A typical neutron star's mass was between 1.35 to 2.1 times the mass of the Sun, and its radius was only between 10 to 20 kilometers. If a person of average weight, 70 kilograms, encountered a neutron star, the impact would be equivalent to the power of a 200 megaton nuclear explosion, 4 times the power of the world's largest nuclear bomb, the Tsar. Of course, all of this was just a hypothesis. If that was the case, the person would be torn apart by the powerful tidal force as they got closer and closer to the neutron star. This was the scientific and technological information in Sauron's memory. It was the basic knowledge that he had learned in physics class. Everything was back to square one. From the perspective of elemental particles, any matter was filled with huge gaps and voids, and elemental obliteration was to forcefully compress these spaces. When matter was twisted, it would result in elemental collapse, just like how carbon was reshaped into artificial diamonds. However, this belonged to the lowest level of elemental obliteration. Because diamonds were diamonds, and the huge army of diamond golems in the Arcane Empire was all made with elemental collapse. In essence, diamonds were still made of carbon. The multiverse where Sauron lived was very different from the one in his previous life, and even the laws were different. Because even though many places here were very primitive, some areas were even beyond the understanding of the interstellar era, especially planes, souls, gods, and so on. Elemental collapse and elemental fusion were the main areas of research of fallen Witch Kalina. Unfortunately, there were still no breakthroughs. Elemental fusion could be ignored here because it was a kind of alchemical technology that produced huge amounts of energy. Now it was time to talk about elemental collapse. Elemental collapse could form diamonds, which was the basic foundation of the top alchemical technology. After that was elemental obliteration, which directly transformed the structure of the elements and twisted the most essential power of the elements. In the interstellar era, it was twisting the periodic table of elements from the level of protons and electrons, twisting one element into another. The demon stone was such a product. It was a new elemental structure. Except for the artificially created by the top alchemists, this kind of material would only be born in the outermost space of every plane, which was close to the elemental void. Only in such a place could the phenomenon of elemental obliteration occur in nature. Such a place was naturally quite dangerous, so the demon stone was extremely rare. If it could be forged into a weapon, its power would be difficult to estimate with common sense. The most obvious point: it was this kind of weapon that could cut off other legendary weapons. Note, it was born with the ability to cut off other legendary weapons. The phenomenon of elemental obliteration also occurred in the astral void. For example, the meteors that streaked across the astral void were almost entirely made of diamonds. This was the phenomenon of elemental obliteration in the astral void for some reason. There was a very small probability of finding large pieces of elemental obliteration in the astral void, but the mass of this material was quite terrible, and it had unimaginable radiation and gravity beyond the limit. It was difficult for flesh and blood to get close to this material, and energy bodies were easily disturbed or even affected by the power of radiation. For a long time. It was only during the Arcane Empire that elemental obliteration was studied and used on a large scale. Many taboo weapons that even the gods were afraid of were the results of elemental obliteration and elemental fission. It was also the reason for the destruction of the Arcane Empire. Generally speaking, the demon stone in front of him was such a thing. Some parts may have changed due to the different rules of the multiverse, but as a whole it was the same thing. A trace of greed appeared in Sauron's eyes. It could be said that there were not many things that could move him, but the goblin demon warlock in front of him actually took out one. The demon stone was an elemental obliteration substance. If he gave it to his main body to forge weapons or find a way to mix it with other weapons, it was possible to directly create a divine weapon. But a dragon crystal was also very important to him. One was a legendary item on the spiritual level, and the other was a legendary item on the material level. Sauron didn't want to trade the dragon crystal, but he also wanted to get the demon stone. So he might need a bold plan. Chapter 582. In the end, Sauron did not agree to the exchange request of the goblin demon warlock. It could be seen that its expression was so angry when it left, as if Sauron was a guy who didn't know what was good for him. In its threatening eyes, the other demons also gloated because they thought that Sauron would not live for long. Sauron dared to refuse the request of a demon lord. It was almost impossible for him to leave the Galumba arena alive. Sure enough, shortly after the goblin demon warlock left, Sauron immediately felt that someone was secretly watching him, and the goblin warlock was setting up a dimensional anchor array near the tavern to prevent Sauron from leaving using advanced teleportation. In the Garuba arena, the goblin demon lord did not want to break the rules that he had set so easily, so it was unlikely that he would attack Sauron openly. His method against him should still be in the death arena. As long as Sauron died in the duel in the Garuba arena, the dragon crystal would naturally become an ownerless object. Sauron's expression was fearless. After rejecting the other party's request, he returned to his room calmly. Because his body had arrived at the third layer of the abyss, the Forgotten Land. At the same time, in Motor City of the Outer Islands, a very important thing happened today. On this day, Gloria was doing magic research. Because they had passed the first layer of the war chess plane, they had obtained a lot of magic knowledge from the Arcane Empire, including part of the powerful combat wizard spell Bigby's 5 consecutive palms. Gloria had been busy memorizing and mastering these spells recently, and at the same time, practicing her own melee combat skills. It couldn't be helped. The combat wizard style was a little different from her past. If she wanted to flexibly use Bigby's 5 consecutive palms, Gloria had to learn some combat skills. At this time, the figure of Fallen Witch Corinne appeared outside the laboratory. This pair of mother and daughter conducted their research separately. Because it was difficult for two powerful witches to say whether they would support each other, both of them conducted their own research separately. All along, Fallen Witch's research had been focused on alchemy. This was because she was very persistent in pursuing the technology of the Arcane Empire. She had even sacrificed everything for it. Today, Fallen Witch arrived outside Gloria's laboratory. Her expression was a little hesitant, and her footsteps were also very hesitant. Several times she raised her hand to knock on the door, but she retracted it again. Gloria perceived the situation outside, and with a faint magic light, the door of the laboratory was directly opened. She raised her head and looked at the Fallen Witch outside. Puzzled, she asked, "Mother, what's the matter?" Fallen Witch slowly walked in. Her face was full of hesitation, but in the end she gritted her teeth and said softly, "Daughter, I want to conduct another alchemy experiment." Gloria's face instantly changed. She shook her head very firmly and said in a deep voice, "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. If the experiment goes wrong, I'm afraid the city of Mordor will be razed to the ground by you." Razed to the ground. This was not a joke. The elemental fission alchemy experiment conducted by Fallen Witch directly destroyed a large laboratory of the Northern Witches after an accident. At the same time, everything nearby was destroyed. Even the land and environment were completely polluted, causing the space to distort and collapse. The land within tens of kilometers of the entire experimental area was covered with terrible energy radiation. It was precisely because of this incident that the Fallen Witch was exiled and imprisoned in Whiterun by the Witch Council. At the same time, she was recognized as the #1 enemy of nature by the Droll organization in this world. She was now living in seclusion in Mordor. If the Fallen Witch dared to appear on the continent, the Droll Order would immediately hunt her down, and it might even lead to other legendary Droll to capture or even kill her. There was no other way. Fallen Witch Corinne, the legendary enemy of nature, the destroyer of nature, the destroyer of the environment, the evil Fallen Witch who polluted the earth. For nearly 100 years, there was almost no adept who had done more damage to the natural world than she had. Her name, her appearance, and her unique traits had spread to almost every druid organization in the material plane. Gloria could not let her do such a dangerous thing, even if the Fallen Witch was her biological mother. Seeing Gloria's determined expression, the fallen witch could not help but show a bitter smile on her face. She naturally knew how big a mistake she had made at the beginning. Countless creatures had died directly and indirectly under her hands. Even the original place of the experiment, that piece of land, was now a land of death. It was estimated that it would not be restored in the next 100 or 200 years. If such an experimental explosion happened in Mordor, it would be a devastating disaster. But she had given up almost everything for these experiments and knowledge. Fallen Witch Corinne did not want to give up so easily, so she tried to persuade her daughter. She looked up at Gloria's eyes and said slowly with a serious expression, "I know I made a mistake. So, this time I plan to do some relatively simple experiments, and the place of the experiments will not be in Mordor. It will not even be in this plane. In the process of analyzing the golem factory in the war chest half-plane, I gained a lot of alchemy engineering knowledge and found some special materials. I plan to build a laboratory in this half-plane, and then do some basic research on element annihilation. Element fission can easily cause terrible damage, but element annihilation is much more stable. I plan to start with refining diamonds first. This laboratory will be open to you, and you can supervise my research at any time. I promise I won't do that kind of dangerous research again." Without the core knowledge of the Arcane Empire, the research on element fission was too terrible. The original big explosion. It almost destroyed everything she had. Fallen Witch did not want such a thing to happen again, so this time she planned to start from the bottom again. Some knowledge in the golem factory gave her inspiration. She wanted to try the part of the alchemy experiment that changed the structure of matter. If she could refine enough adamantine, then she could accumulate a wealth of experience and create an adamantine golem. Gloria's expression hesitated. She hesitated for a long time, then nodded gently and said, "If it's just refining diamonds, I can agree to your research, but the experiment can only be done in the war chest half-plane, and I will supervise your research progress at any time. If I think there will be terrible danger, I will forcibly stop your experiment." There was a surprised expression on Fallen Witch's face. She excitedly reached out and hugged her daughter in front of her, kissed her on the face and said a little incoherently, "Thank you. Thank you, my daughter." Gloria couldn't help but sigh. No matter how big of a mistake the woman in front of her had made, she was still her mother. Gloria could not refuse her in this case. Now he could only hope that she was only researching alchemy that could change the structure of matter and not the extremely dangerous elemental fission research. Even if it was inside the demi-plane of war chess, if that kind of terrifying explosion happened, the final result would be unpredictable. If the half-plane could not withstand the terrible explosion and collapsed, Gloria did not know how to explain it to Soren. She was curious about the knowledge of the Arcane Empire. But Gloria also understood that without the core knowledge, any research on the top technology of the Arcane Empire would be quite dangerous. So she decided to follow up on Fallen Witch's experiment personally. There was indeed a lot of automatic alchemy factory technology in the Golem factory, especially the energy structure network of the magic crystal transmission. It could automatically extract the power of the element pool and transmit it to the factory. There were also various other materials and knowledge. If used properly, they might be able to achieve some results in alchemy. Chapter 583. Soren naturally did not know about Mordor City. If he knew, as long as it was not the kind of alchemy research similar to nuclear fusion, he should have agreed to Fallen Witch's request. After all, alchemy could bring him great help. Just a group of clay golems and stone golems had changed the labor capacity of the city of Mordor. Upgrading the transportation capacity to the ton level was indeed very effective. If there were enough golems to carry out the work and there was enough energy to maintain their operation, it would be very effective. Then Mordor City could soon be built into a large city with a powerful golem army. As long as Fallen Witch's experiment was not carried out in Mordor City, the danger was undoubtedly reduced a lot. Rebuilding a laboratory was not a small project. In order to avoid attracting too much attention, Gloria could only secretly transfer people, and at the same time she also fully followed up on alchemy. In any case, there were things that happened before, so she was still worried about her mother. She was worried that her mother was too eager for quick success, and it would be quite troublesome if another accident happened. At the same time, on the third floor of the abyss, Sauron also welcomed a new challenge. Although he had expected this for a long time, when he saw the Goblin Demon Warlock personally, his expression was still a little stunned. His opponent was the host of the Golumba Arena during this time. The Goblin Demon Warlock. The other party's expression was full of viciousness and resentment. It was precisely because it failed to complete the task given by the demon lord, Miamide, Calamity Coin, that it was kicked into the arena to duel with Sauron. If he could kill Sauron, it would be great and he could restore his former status. But if he lost to Sauron, the demon lord would not change the rules of the Golumba arena for him. So if he lost, he would die. Sauron. Beheader Sauron. It could be seen that although Sauron's situation was getting more and more dangerous, his popularity in the eyes of the demons was increasing. Reputation was never too high in the bottomless abyss. It might not be useful now, but when Sauron decided to establish his own territory, it would be very useful. It was accompanied by a muffled rumble. A tall but fat goblin appeared in front of everyone. Its pupils were scarlet, and its body had obvious demonic features. There were many tattoos and scars all over its body. It was taller than an ordinary demon, and it held a strange scepter inlaid with dark red gems. The pressure of a demon lord shrouded the sky above the Golumba arena, and all the demons were as silent as cicadas in winter. The clamorous shouts from before seemed to have been strangled by someone, and all of a sudden, even breathing became difficult. Demon Lord. The ruler of the goblins. Miamide Calamity Coin. Legend had it that it was the experimental product of a certain high-grade demon. In the end, it made a deal with the devil and killed its own master, becoming the demon lord of the bottomless abyss. Balrog. The goblin demon lord sat on the throne at the top of the Golumba arena and looked at Sauron's figure with a very unfriendly gaze. For any demon lord, it would be better for this kind of person who dared to disobey him to become a dead man. And demons like Balrog seemed to be easy to deal with. The corpse of Balor hanging outside the Golumba arena was its former enemy. Sauron's expression was very calm. His gaze swept around the arena, and suddenly he seemed to see the figure of a succubus. Greater polymorph. It seemed that another lawless visitor had come here. A shadow quietly escaped here, and no one noticed the arrival of Sauron's body. Even the goblin demon lord sitting in the center did not realize that a god's body had appeared. Although the demon lord had great power and had a weak virtual divinity in his own territory, there was still a huge gap between these and a real god and a top rogue. Hee hee. The goblin demon warlock made a strange laugh, looked at Sauron with resentment and slowly said, "Ungrateful guy. Have a taste of my power. Summon demon. Protect against fire damage." As a quasi-legendary spellcaster, the goblin demon warlock launched a summoning spell in an instant, and at the same time he blessed himself with protection against fire damage and continued to cast spells at an amazing speed. "Come out, my servant." With the staff hitting the ground heavily, there was a loud bang from the left and right sides of the arena, and then two steel golems appeared with heavy footsteps. An unequal battle. The Golumba arena even released the golems of the goblin demon warlock. The enemies on the field immediately formed a numerical suppression on Sauron. Greater invisibility. The goblin demon warlock launched the equipment on its body, and its figure gradually disappeared. However, in front of it, a portal slowly opened, directly connecting to the Ishuraba plain, and then a ferocious demon rushed out. It seemed that it had been prepared for a long time. From the beginning, it had formulated tactics against Sauron and used its authority to facilitate it. Because according to the normal mode of death, spellcasters could not bring their own golems in. The two steel golems began to approach. The demon that rushed out of the summoning circle locked its target on Sauron in an instant. It made a dull roar and rushed over in an instant. There was a crisp collision sound. Sauron's body ignited with a raging fire. He took out a bottle of magma dragon's blood and sprinkled it on himself. With the crackling sound of bones, the fire on Sauron's body rose and spread directly, covering a distance of nearly 10 meters. It was as if someone had poured a bucket of gasoline on him, and he transformed into the Balrog form again. Entangle. Sauron flapped his demonic wings and rose into the air. With a gentle wave of his hand, a flame whip gathered in his palm. The long whip burning with raging fire wrapped around the demon in front of him. His figure also swooped down in an instant, swinging his sword and slashing it. The steel golem began to accelerate and rushed directly over. It seemed that it wanted to hold Sauron's figure and prevent him from leaving the ground. Poison curse. Mental retardation. The hazy figure of the goblin demon warlock also appeared. It raised its hand and cast a spell. However, it was not a lethal spell, but the most vicious mental retardation spell. If Sauron could not pass the test of immunity, it could turn him into a mentally retarded person in an instant. However, it was afraid that it would be disappointed because this kind of spell had little effect on Sauron. Even if it used Poison Curse in advance to reduce immunity, it was still the same. With a splash of blood, the summoned demon was killed by Sauron on the spot. The steel golem approached. At this moment, Sauron seemed to be a little distracted, but on the other side of the Golumba arena, a figure that could not be seen by the naked eye was gradually approaching the position of the demon lord. Chapter 584. Sauron was at a disadvantage because he was distracted for a moment. The two steel golems entangled his figure, and the goblin demon warlock was also casting spells. It seemed to have a premonition that victory was coming. If Sauron couldn't break free from the two steel golems, then it could easily use spells to kill the annoying Balrog in front of it. The evil demon was killed. A moment ago, Sauron seemed to be winning, but in the next moment, Sauron's situation was quite worrying. The demons in the audience suddenly exclaimed. They didn't understand why Sauron paused just now, and they didn't know if he was affected by the mental retardation spell. Anyway, the situation now was that he was attacked by the two steel golems. If this continued, Sauron's defeat was only a matter of time. This change immediately attracted the attention of the demon lord, Miamid Calamity Coin. A cruel smile appeared on its ferocious face, as if it was happy to see this annoying Balrog torn to pieces by its subordinates. This demon lord was a little impatient. Because if it wasn't because of the rules in the Golumba arena, it would have killed the Balrog in front of it with its own hands. Anyone who dared to offend the demon lord's dignity would have to pay a heavy price. A shadow gradually approached. In the Golumba arena, Sauron's movements seemed to be half a beat slower, and the situation became more and more obvious. At this time, not only the demons in the audience, but even the goblin demon warlock directly suspected that the mental retardation spell just now had taken effect. Or rather, part of it had already taken effect. Because the current Sauron's fighting skills and fighting ability had almost plummeted. Before it could start to cast spells, Sauron was already being attacked by the two steel golems. He was completely relying on his powerful demon body to resist. But no matter how tenacious the demon's vitality was, it couldn't last long. The steel golem's huge strength was enough to kill the Balrog in front of it in a few minutes. As a goblin demon warlock who lived near lava volcanoes, it was actually best at fire-type spells. It was a pity that Sauron was immune to fire damage. Otherwise, it would have let him have a taste of the power of an explosion. Demon Lord Miamid Calamity Coin revealed a smile on his face. As a powerful demon lord, it was almost certain that Sauron could only hold on for 1 or 2 minutes. It almost couldn't wait. After killing this annoying flame demon, he would hang its corpse outside the Golumba arena. By then there would be 2 legendary demon corpses hanging in the Golumba arena. One would be a Baelor, and the other would be a slightly weaker flame demon. An unforeseen event occurred at this moment. Even Soren himself hadn't expected such an unforeseen event, because a figure suddenly rushed out from the audience the moment his main body approached the goblin demon lord. On the surface, she looked like a succubus, but in the blink of an eye, she had transformed into a rune girl with long silver-white metallic hair. Her target was also the demon lord. In the face of the sudden attack, the goblin demon lord Miamid Calamity Coin almost instantly activated a protective spell, and then its whole body was wrapped in an energy shield. It raised its scepter and sent out a ray of negative energy, and at the same time, intended to activate teleportation to leave. As a high and mighty demon lord, it had enough fighters to defeat the opponent, so there was no need for it to fight in person. Meteor burst. A terrible fireball fell from the sky. Under the attack of the rune girl, the whole Golumba arena was in chaos. Who knew how many demons were caught in the crossfire and died miserably in the fierce explosions? As for the goblin demon warlocks in the arena, they forcibly interrupted their casting and awkwardly dodged the spells. Hee hee. The rune girl made a cheerful laugh as if she was in a good mood because of the terrible destruction and destruction. Exquisite rune dolls appeared around her body. Not only did she target the goblin demon lord in her sight, but all the demons around her were also in her killing range. She seemed very happy at the moment. It could even be said that she was excited, as if she had received great spiritual satisfaction. Teleportation activated. Just when the demon lord Miamid Calamity Coin was about to launch a teleportation spell to open the distance, a trace of horror suddenly appeared on its face because it felt that the space around it was blocked. A powerful force. It directly forcibly blocked the space around its body. Even a demon lord like it could not break through this power. It was like a terrible power of the gods. Divine power infusion. Half-elf, clergy activated. Rogue, clergy activated. Greater haste. Slaughter transformation. Shadow leap. Shadow strike. Sword form, beheading. Sword form, spinning strike. A hazy shadow suddenly appeared, exuding a terrible aura of slaughter. This figure passed through the space and appeared behind the demon Lord Miamid Calamity coin. The two curved swords in his hands were flowing with strange light. In an instant he did not know how many attacks he launched. The energy shield of the demon Lord Miamid Calamity coin shattered like an eggshell, and then it was completely exposed to the other party's attack. A burst of blood splashed. A faint divine power shrouded the small space, and the demon Lord Miamid Calamity coin was horrified to find that he didn't have the chance to cast any teleportation spells. All of his teleportation spells were sealed by the divine power. The opponent was a god. This was the last thought in its mind, and then it saw a headless body that fell to the ground. That was its body. Up until the moment of his death, demon Lord Miamid Calamity coin didn't know when he had offended a god. So much so that a god had personally descended to the bottomless abyss and chose to assassinate him at such a time. It died with its eyes wide open. As a high-ranked legendary demon lord, it couldn't even put up a fight before dying in the hands of a god. A powerful soul force surged out. In Soren's eyes, a row of data prompts quickly appeared. Target is dead. Killed demon Lord Miamid Calamity coin. Extracting target's soul energy. You've gained 617,500 slaughter EXP. Target has divine power. Extracting target's divinity. You've gained 8 divinity. Target has divine power. Extracting target's divinity. You've gained 5 divinity. Chapter 585. The Golumba arena was in chaos. There were fires everywhere as well as all kinds of explosions. The death of the demon Lord Miamid happened in an instant. This amazing change was hard for many to accept in a short period of time. In the arena below, the Goblin Fiend Warlock was already confident of victory, but because of this series of unforeseen events, he was a little confused, so his reaction was naturally a little slower by half a beat. After all, no matter who saw their boss suddenly die, they would be shocked. But in that moment, the situation of the battle was completely reversed by Sauron. When the Goblin Fiend Warlock reacted, the 2 steel golems had already been dismantled by him. In an instant, the Goblin Fiend Warlock faced Sauron, who was swooping down from the sky, and prepared to use an instant short-distance teleportation spell to dodge. His target was the chaotic demon audience behind him. Anyway, now that the Goblin Fiend Warlock was dead, the rules of the Golumba arena were a joke. He first teleported behind the demons in the audience to confuse Sauron's sight, then used a long-distance teleportation spell to escape the battle. Very smart tactical thinking. If there were no accidents, the Goblin Fiend Warlock in front of him should be able to escape. However, an accident happened. The Goblin Fiend Warlock suddenly found a powerful force locking the space around his body, and then his short-distance teleportation spell suddenly became ineffective. The Goblin Fiend Warlock felt his vision blur. He felt as if he was riding on a cloud, and he saw a corpse lying on the ground. He was dead. At the last moment of his death, only one sentence could express his feelings at the moment. You cheated. Soren's body only appeared for a moment. After killing the Goblin Fiend Warlock, he instantly activated the Evade Sight ability and disappeared from everyone's sight. He only took what he wanted with him. No one saw his real appearance because the Rune Girl's perfect explosion completely covered everything. When people reacted, they could only see the corpse of the Goblin Fiend Warlock. The true body of a god could not be known to demons because it would cause unnecessary trouble when it reached the ears of other powerful demon lords. Goblin Demon Lord Miamid Calamity coin was only a demon lord who ruled over a small area. If it was a demon lord that controlled a plane or even half a plane, even Sauron's main body would not have the slightest chance of victory. Target killed. Soren took the spoils of war in an instant, and then rushed towards the back of the Golumba arena. The Goblin Demon Lord must have his own treasure trove. With the Demon Lord's death, chaos was bound to descend. He had to take away enough spoils of war before the chaos erupted. As for the demon avatars left behind, they naturally needed to accumulate wealth in order to lay a foundation for the upcoming fight for territory. Under such circumstances, the demonic doppelganger was of little use. Sauron quickly left after killing the Goblin Demon Warlock, but the true body of the deity moved forward at high speed, avoiding all the guards along the way, and found its way to the treasure vault of the Garuba arena. The advantage of a rogue was so obvious. In the face of the complicated magic lock of the treasure vault, Soren did not even have the idea of opening the lock. He directly poured his divine power into the weapon and forcibly destroyed it. Then, regardless of what was inside, he used his own divine power to resist a disintegrate, a finger of death, a malicious polymorph, and other scattered protective spells. Finally, he put all the spoils of war that could be taken away into the dimensional space that he opened with his divine power. This was the advantage of a god. Soren emptied the entire treasure vault in one breath. He did not have the time to count how many spoils of war there were, but the area should be more than 100 cubic meters. There were all kinds of gold and jewelry, all kinds of weapons and equipment, and all kinds of rare materials. The wealth that the Goblin Demon Lord had accumulated for hundreds of years was taken away by Soren, and even the weapons next to it were put into the dimensional space. Take it all away. Soren could expect one thing, that was, with the death of the Demon Lord, Miamide Calamity Coin's former subordinates would definitely divide its wealth and territory. Although the demon's avatar now had fame and power, it still needed time to compete for all of this. In order to fight for the greatest benefits, he could now take away as much as he could to leave behind for the demon's avatar. A terrible dragon's aura descended. Soren looked up at the sky, and in an instant, he escaped into the shadows again, and then disappeared from the treasure vault. There was an angry dragon roar outside the treasure vault. At the moment when the demon lord Miamide Calamity Coin died, the abyssal demon dragon that signed a contract with it finally sensed everything. As a chaotic and evil abyssal demon dragon, the first thing it did after waking up was not to find its ally to help it take revenge, but to go outside the treasure vault of its ally first. Unfortunately, it was still a step behind Soren. When the abyssal demon dragon rushed over, the whole treasure vault was already empty. Now was not the time to deal with the abyssal demon dragon. This kind of giant dragon that was assimilated by the abyss had a challenge rating of more than 25. Even the demon lord was very afraid of it. This was its territory, and Soren could not kill the powerful abyssal demon dragon in one hit, so he was ready to retreat first. The abyssal demon dragon was a product of chaos and evil. Although the order of the Golumba arena had collapsed, the contract between the abyssal demon dragon and the goblin demons was all invalid. There would be many powerful demons in the future, and maybe there would be a chance to use it. After all, for the abyssal demon dragon, it valued the treasure the most. If it did not come to an agreement in the future when the demon's avatar evolved into a Baler, it could still kill it and increase its strength to gain a lot of wealth. Soren left the Golumba arena. He could not stay in the abyss for too long, it would easily attract the attention of other powerful demon lords. The appearance of the god's avatar in the abyss would also cause a lot of trouble. But before leaving, he still needed to leave something for the demon's avatar, such as a legendary beheading sword that was personally made by the god, and enough resources for the demon's avatar to occupy a place. Finally, Soren also tried to find the traces of the rune girl, but at this time she was already gone. The Golumba arena was on fire. The death of the demon lord caused the goblin guards to fall into chaos. The demons that had been suppressed for a long time launched all kinds of crazy attacks because of their chaotic nature. Under the drive of greed and ambition, the goblins were quickly defeated by the demons. There should be a new owner here. Almost all of the middle-tier and high-tier demons had this thought in their minds. Chapter 586. The chaos spread quickly. Battles immediately broke out around the Golumba arena. The demons and goblins were powerless to salvage the situation. Without the leadership of the demon lord, they became chaotic. The dramatic change happened so quickly. When Sauron retreated from the chaotic battlefield and arrived at the lava tavern, the scene in front of him happened. Master. The eyes of the succubus owner, who had a seductive face and a slave collar on her fair neck, lit up the moment she saw Sauron. She quickly came to Sauron and crawled under him. She lowered her head and kissed his toes. She said in a hurried voice, "The powerful decapitator, Sauron. The lowly Rhinalis is willing to serve you as my master. With the Styx as my witness, I am willing to dedicate everything I have to you. Please allow me to take them as your servants." The 5 succubus maids behind the beautiful succubus owner also knelt down and kissed Sauron's toes. They swore to serve him as their master in the name of the Styx. However, she also used a little trick when she said that. Her original identity was a slave, but when she swore to serve Sauron, she became a servant. Servants and slaves were two different concepts. Succubus was very smart. Succubus was a high-value commodity in the abyss. At the very least, these succubus slaves were wealth that could attract any high-grade demon to fight over them. The chaos outside had made the smart Renalise guess everything. In this case, the succubus who were not strong enough could not protect themselves. They could only find a powerful master to protect their safety. Sauron, who had always lived in the Lava Tavern, was undoubtedly one of the candidates. Yesterday, the demon lord Miamed Calamity Coin wanted to forcefully trade dragon crystals with him. Today he died without knowing why. Even an idiot could not help but have some thoughts. Did this powerful flame devil have some incredible backer behind him? For the beautiful succubus lady boss in front of him, even if Sauron didn't have any impressive backing, just relying on his powerful strength as a Balrog and the reputation he won in the Galumba arena was enough to protect them from being robbed and humiliated by other demons. Although Succubus was naturally lustful, not everyone could accept it. They also liked handsome demons, and Sauron was undoubtedly more pleasing to the eye than other high-ranking demons. Moreover, he had rejected the tempting invitation of succubus maids, which made them value him even more. Lady Succubus's pledge of allegiance quickly calmed down the restless demons in the tavern. During this period of time, Sauron's reputation was not small. Balrog Sauron. The Beheader Sauron. The powerful demon who rose to prominence in the Galumba arena had never failed. Almost all the demons here had heard of his name. The demons who had bad intentions at the beginning had obviously put away their dirty thoughts. Succubus was a high-value commodity whether in the bottomless abyss or the Baator Inferno. These succubus were sold at a high price to others, but now that they had sworn to serve Sauron, these neutral demons had to consider the price of offending a powerful Balrog. The chain reaction began to take effect. Lady Succubus had just sworn to serve Sauron, and the demons in the tavern who were acting as thugs immediately swore their loyalty. Servants and slaves were two different concepts, and they also realized that they had to do something. In this chaotic situation, the Lava Tavern was a hot steamed bun, and they definitely needed to hug a thick thigh to ensure their safety. Never underestimate the effect of reputation. Just as most of the demons in the Lava Tavern swore to serve Sauron as their master, a ferocious and ugly Anababa appeared outside. "Your Excellency Sauron." The ugly Anababa came in front of Sauron, followed by two other demons. The Anababa quickly walked in front of Sauron, bowed, and said, "The situation outside is getting more and more chaotic. I'm worried that other demons will take care of and rob my shop. So I would like to ask the powerful Your Excellency Sauron to provide us with protection." There were other demons following behind the Anababa. Quite a number of neutral demons had set up shop in the Garuba arena. Perhaps Sauron's lawful evil faction could easily make demons hate him, but for these neutral demons, it was easier for Sauron to gain their approval, just like how demons preferred to trade with devils instead of demons. "This is a gift for Your Excellency." The Anababa gave a look behind her, and soon a servant came over with a heavy box. When the Anababa opened it, a golden light immediately appeared. It was full of calamity coins and a few gems, and its value was probably not low. However, the Anababa seemed to be worried that Sauron would be dissatisfied, and hurriedly said, "This is just a small token of our appreciation. If Your Excellency is willing to protect our business, we will offer this amount of filial piety every month." The demonic goblins were on the verge of collapse. The chaotic situation was no longer something that the demonic goblins could control, and the Galumba arena was about to usher in a new separatist situation. The Anababa was undoubtedly a very smart person. She directly used the taxes that should have been handed over to the demonic goblins as protection fees for Sauron. In the current situation, hugging the thick thigh of a legendary Balrog was definitely more reliable than hugging the demonic goblins. It was as if she had played a leading role. Originally, there were a large number of shops near the Galumba arena, and the demons of the neutral camp were anxious to pay protection fees to Sauron, hoping that he would protect them from this chaotic crisis. The battle had begun to affect this place. If the demons rushed in next, their shops would probably be looted. Although they also had powerful guards, without a legendary powerhouse to deter the enemy, they would definitely suffer some losses. In the blink of an eye. With the Lava Tavern as the center of the street, almost the majority of the demons who opened shops on the street paid protection fees to Sauron. At the same time, some demons realized that this was an opportunity to rise up, and they all swore on the river Styx that they would serve Sauron as their master. However, these guys also had some tricks of their own. They swore as servants and not as slaves. This meant that they had a certain amount of freedom and at the same time the right to own their own private property. Servants were servants and slaves were slaves. The slaves themselves were one of the wealth of the master. For a time, many demons who were originally slaves of the demonic goblins had now become Sauron's servants. Chapter 587. Riding on someone's coattails was a skill. In just a short while, Sauron had gathered a group of demons under his command. Now that the street where the Lava Tavern was located had become his territory, he naturally needed to maintain the law and order here to ensure that the chaotic battles in other places would not affect here. The succubus lady boss of the tavern was obviously a very skilled female. Because she was the first to swear to serve Sauron as her master, she was obviously already acting like a general manager. She stood intimately beside Sauron and began to give orders to gather the other demons. Although they only occupied a street in the Galumba arena, it was a good start for Sauron. As long as he could stabilize his current territory, he could slowly erode everything in the Galumba arena and eventually become the owner of this arena. And his own strength still needed to be improved. Since these evil shop owners sought his protection, then Sauron had the right to kill those demons who dared to barge in here and use their demon blood to improve his own strength. The fire spread. The Galumba arena had become a riot. Soon, other demons rushed here because there was a blacksmith shop on the street where the Lava Tavern was located. Some demons intended to come here to snatch weapons. Order collapsed. The chaos would inevitably cause all kinds of destruction. Some places in the Galumba arena had been turned into ruins, and the laughter of the demons could be faintly heard. However, the ambitious demons were doing the same thing as Sauron, occupying some places as their own territory. Seeing that they could not control the situation, the demons gave up on the town outside the Galumba arena and turned to put down the heavy iron gate of the arena, preparing to protect the arena itself. Blood splattered everywhere. Sauron raised his flame whip and directly entangled a demon who dared to rush into his territory to loot, then swung his sword and cut off its head. Demon corpses fell one after another. Because of their chaotic nature, the demons who were crazily destroying things finally woke up. Many of them exclaimed, "Sauron! Balrog Sauron! It's Sauron the Beheader!" The power of fear spread. The demons who wanted to take advantage of the chaos quickly retreated from the territory near the Lava Tavern. During this time, Sauron's name as the Beheader had spread to the demons' ears. When Sauron killed Ahezru, the accumulated power finally reached a critical point. His body ignited with raging flames, and the bones all over his body made crackling sounds. His body suddenly grew to nearly 3 meters tall, and he looked like a giant full of pressure. Strange runes appeared on his dark demon horns, and mysterious demon tattoos covered his naked chest all the way to his back. The demon wings on his back became even bigger, and the wingspan was already close to 6 meters wide. The rising flames shrouded everything nearby, and all the restless demons avoided the place. The whole Galumba arena was in chaos, but the street where Sauron was sitting was very calm. A row of data appeared before his eyes. Creature level increased to 20. Demon bloodline fusion mutation. Body evolution mutation. Flaming demon. Elite form has been upgraded to Balrog form. Ability upgrade. Talent ability, Flame Body, has been upgraded to Flame Body. Spell-like ability, Summon Demon, effect has been upgraded. Spell-like ability, Dominate Demon, effect has been upgraded. Balrog form evolution. Basic attributes have been upgraded. Energy mutation. You have comprehended a new spell-like ability, Telekinesis. You have comprehended a new ability, Dual Wielding. Finally, he evolved into a Balrog. When his demon bloodline mutated, Sauron's aura also gradually rose. In the end, it formed a substantial pressure, making the surrounding demons and demons unable to breathe. The pressure of a greater demon. Only by evolving into a greater demon could one be qualified to become a powerful demon lord. At this time, Sauron's attributes had changed. Name Sauron. Race, demon. Form, Balrog, grade 5, large otherworld creature. Transdimensional, evil, level. Creature level 20 attributes. Strength 30, agility 20, constitution 25, intelligence 20, wisdom 20, charm 23. Alignment, lawful evil. Note, other demons will be slightly hostile to your actions. HP, 281375 demonic energy. 1063000. Skills, sneak 185, deception 125, negotiate 115, literacy 150, intimidation 270, spell identification 120, use magic device 120, listen 115, detect 115, search 90 abilities, gaze of fear, spirit of fear, flame body, flame whip, bind, demon claws, +1 natural magic weapon, demon skin, damage reduction +10, demon resistance, all types of resistance +10. Specialization, dual wielding, preemptive attack, multi-attack, weapon mastery, beheading sword, exotic weapon mastery, whip, fierce attack. Spell-like abilities, telekinesis, blasphemy, greater teleportation, fear, cast at will, fireball 5 times a day, instant cast, dominate demon once a day, burning hand, summon demon, telepathy. Legendary realm. As Sauron became a Balrog, he also entered the legendary realm. However, there were not too obvious changes when a demon entered the legendary realm. The biggest difference was that Sauron added the large otherworld creature, cross-plane, and evil symbols. This meant that he was qualified to enter the plane stage. 30 points of strength. Although he did not reach the strongest form of the Balrog, Sauron's huge body that was 3 meters tall had enough power to suppress the giant's bloodline. Balrogs were originally ferocious beheaders. If he could become a Baelor, then his strength could reach a terrifying 35 points. Sauron automatically learned the dual-wielding ability. From now on, he could use the beheading sword and the flame whip at the same time to attack. If he became a Baelor, this ability would be improved. Moreover, with Sauron's foundation, it was very likely that he would be a beheader and executioner as a Baelor in the future. These two professions were regarded as legendary warrior professions. Just like the legendary advanced profession, Storm Lord, Beheader, and Executioner, were directly regarded as legendary melee professions, superimposed on the original creature level of the Baelor. This kind of advanced Baelor would become quite terrifying. Chapter 588. Update begins. The night passed quickly. The once bustling Garuba arena had fallen into disarray within a day's time. There were corpses of demons everywhere. The chaotic nature of the demons caused their long-suppressed nature to erupt. Without the deterrence of the Demon Lord, many high-grade demons' ambition led to further expansion of the riot. Perhaps it was because of the wealth of the goblins, or because they wanted to rob the demons who cheated them, or just to vent their anger. In the end, there were thousands of demon corpses left on the ground. The Lava Tavern was the only place that was intact. Now it had become Sauron's base camp. The demons who swore loyalty to him had begun to maintain the security here, although they were unwilling to do so. Sauron didn't care about the demons' thoughts. Because as long as it was an oath made with the river Styx, it would have a certain binding force. The river Styx's power was difficult to estimate with common sense because it involved the soul. Many gods couldn't be exempted from this binding force. Currently, the Galumba arena had formed a separatist scene. The territory in the south belonged to a powerful soul judgment demon. It was a veteran high-grade demon here. The territory in the north belonged to a 6-armed snake demon. It was the subordinate of the original Demon Lord, and now it quickly controlled a group of demons. In the east was the Lava Tavern, and Sauron had become the ruler here. The last one was the Galumba arena in the west. Now the gate was closed and the remaining demons and goblins were trying to defend this land. The situation had become quite tense. However, Sauron didn't care because his energy was focused on his main body. Although Sauron had expected the Demon Lord to be rich, he didn't expect it to be this rich. The messy gemstones and gold added up to almost 500,000 Kindler. This guy was richer than many dragons. More importantly, there were all kinds of strange materials. The bottomless abyss was an important source of materials in the lower planes. The Demon Lord collected a large number of high-grade materials. Sauron found 5 demon stones alone. The other 3 were similar. But there was one that was only the size of a fist and weighed more than 200 kilograms. It was a destructive substance from the void. The last piece was rather special. This was because it had a diamond-like structure. It was only the size of a fingernail, but it weighed up to 50 kilograms. Even Sauron as a god could not tell what it was exactly. But it must have come from the astral plane. He still had to take what he needed to take. He couldn't leave anything too eye-catching for the demon incarnation to prevent others from associating the demon incarnation with the death of the goblin Demon Lord. That was why Sauron decided to leave a piece of equipment for his demon incarnation. A legendary beheading sword. As a god, Sauron had his own unique abilities. He used his divine power to change the structure of the sword and fused it with one of the demon stones. After that, the +2 rare grade weapon became a legendary weapon. Soren named it Slayer. Item type: Slayer, +2 item grade. Tier 2 legendary. Description: this is an executioner's sword that has been infused with the power of the demon stone. After being forged with divine power, it possesses extraordinary strength. It can directly cut through other weapons, but because of its heavy weight, it requires enough strength to be used flexibly. Requirements: 18 strength, strength requirement +2. Effects: Demon Stone's characteristics: Beheading characteristic, Sharpness characteristic, +8 sharpness, +7 penetration, +5 toughness, +5 armor break, +5 fire damage. Weapon special effect: Demon Stone's characteristics. This weapon has been infused with a special demon stone, which makes the weapon extremely heavy. It can cause more damage to the enemy, but it also causes strength requirement +2. Weapon special effect: Beheading characteristic. This weapon can cause more damage when it is used as a beheading attack. Weapon special effect: Sharpness. Because of the power of the demon stone, this weapon can cut through all non-rare grade weapons in battle. There is a high chance that a rare grade weapon will be cut through, and a small chance that a legendary weapon will be cut through. It was a beheading sword that was burning with flames. It was the work of a god. Although it was not at the level of a divine artifact, it had a powerful characteristic. That is, it could cut through the enemy's weapon. The biggest characteristic of the destructive substance was that it could cut through all non-rare grade weapons. The same applied to rare grade weapons, and even legendary weapons could be cut through. The weight and density of the material made it quite amazing in terms of sharpness and penetration. This weapon was even more dangerous than icing death. However, its weakness was also quite obvious because it weighed over 100 kilograms. Only a being like the demon incarnation could use it flexibly. The beheading sword was originally a two-handed weapon. When using a two-handed weapon, there was also an obvious requirement on the size of the body. The demon incarnation could use it flexibly, but it was rather inconvenient for the main body. This was a weapon specially prepared for the Balrog. A gentle sea breeze blew against his face. When Olaf Seadog woke up, he found himself drifting on a beach. In front of him was a barren land. After waking up a little, he immediately felt the hunger in his stomach. "Is there anyone alive?" Seadog stood up and shouted. Unfortunately, he didn't receive any response. Almost all of his men were dead. He couldn't help but feel dejected, but it wasn't enough to knock down this man who had been drifting on the sea all year round. After checking his body and confirming that he wasn't seriously injured, he took his weapon and walked towards the beach. Damn that storm. Traveling on the sea would inevitably lead to some disasters. Even Oel, Seadog himself didn't expect that his fleet would encounter a terrible storm while escorting goods to an eastern kingdom. His ship sank. Most of his sailors were dead, or else he wouldn't know where he drifted to. He was feeling very depressed because even with his rich sailing experience, he didn't know where he drifted to. He was sure that this was the Eastern world. Due to the terrible radiation in the Eastern world, many lands had become quite barren. This was a certain continent in the Eastern Sea. Well, Seadog couldn't be sure if it was a continental shelf or a large and desolate island. He didn't have the energy to study too much. He had to fill his stomach and ensure his survival before slowly considering other things. I hope Sir Soren won't blame me. Seadog smacked his lips and couldn't help but curse. Son of a bitch. I'm in trouble. My territory is definitely going to be taken over by the Cyclops. I have to find a way to return. This was an unfamiliar continent. Even he wasn't sure where it was because there weren't many plants on this barren land, as if something had left an irreparable wound on this land. Chapter 589. Everything before his eyes was so desolate. Seadog dragged his weary body forward, feeling as though his mouth was about to crack and bleed. Ahead of him he could only see scattered weeds. For some unknown reason, these weeds were actually black in color, causing one's hair to stand on end. The environment here was much worse compared to the outer islands. Not only did Seadog fail to find any food, he had also expended a lot of his stamina. He couldn't help but sit down and curse. What the hell is this place? Why can't I find anything to eat? There was no food. There was no fresh water. Seadog could feel his stamina deteriorating rapidly. At this rate he feared he would be trapped to death. No, I have to save myself. Sea Dog forced himself to crawl back up and continued walking along the desolate beach, muttering, "No. I can't die here. It wasn't easy for me to climb to the rank of chieftain. How can I die here for no reason?" The desire to survive drove him forward. However, everything before his eyes remained incomparably desolate, as though this land had been cursed. Asterisk squeak squeak asterisk a bizarre sound echoed from a clump of weeds ahead. Sea Dog's eyes abruptly lit up as he pulled out his dagger and rushed forward. He rapidly dug through the weeds and soon found a rat nest. Inside the nest was a type of rat with gray fur and sharp teeth. This ferocious rat bit old Sea Dog's arm. However, Sea Dog ignored the blood flowing out from his arm and stabbed the rat to death with his dagger. Then he hungrily swallowed the rat's blood and bones. His stamina finally began to recover. Only now did old Sea Dog have some strength to continue his exploration. After walking for half a day, when the sun became increasingly intense, something finally appeared in his vision. An incomparably colossal statue. Its height was probably over 100 meters. At present, only half of its body remained. In front of him was a river, while on the left was another colossal statue. However, all that was left was a pair of severed legs. Where the hell is this? Sea Dog's expression turned somewhat panicked. Based on his knowledge, he should have heard of such a landmark. However, he had never heard of it before. This meant that he had arrived at a completely foreign land. A river flowed between the two statues. After drinking several mouthfuls of water, Sea Dog carefully observed his surroundings. He then noticed a weathered stone tablet. The words on it were already very blurred, but with his knowledge of antiques, he could still determine that it had existed for a very long time. It's not the Eastern Kingdom. Sea Dog's face was pale as he muttered to himself, "Where the hell have I been blown to by the wind and waves?" Passed through the statue. His field of vision gradually widened. It was a barren land. The red soil looked as if it had been burned by a raging fire. There were barely any living creatures. There was a huge hill in the distance. In order to get a better view, old Sea Dog frantically ran over. However, when he stood in front of the huge hill, his expression froze. Because he saw someone. In other words, the humongous hill in front of him was in the shape of a human. He saw an arm buried in sand and a huge petrified head. He didn't know how big the giant's body was. Just the part that was exposed above the ground was like a hill. Woo woo woo. A strange wind blew as if there was something very frightening in the distance. Sea Dog couldn't help but shiver. This place is too strange. Sea Dog hesitated, not knowing if he should continue forward or return to the coast. This was an unfamiliar continent. He couldn't determine its size, but it was certainly not as vast as the continental shelf. This should be the eastern part of the world because such a strange place could only exist in the east. A faint shout could be heard. Sea Dog stood at the top of the hill. Because the surroundings were barren, he could see a small shadow from afar. Someone is calling me? Sea Dog vigilantly looked towards the direction of the huge stone statue with pleasant surprise. He saw a small boat. It was the kind of lifeboat that could only fit a few people. Usually it would be suspended from a large ship. Motherfucker. Sea Dog cried out in excitement and ran towards that direction, muttering to himself, "I thought those bastards were all dead. Who would have thought there were still a few bastards alive?" It was a fleet of merchant ships heading towards the east. There were a total of 6 ships, 4 cargo ships and 2 warships. Even if they encountered such a huge storm, it was impossible for all of them to perish. It seemed his luck was pretty good. Some of his men were washed here by the waves. "Boss." A pirate with a ferocious face rushed over and excitedly said, "You're not dead." "That's great." Sea Dog slapped him and curled his lips, saying, "Even if you're dead, I won't die. Is there anyone else? Only the 3 of you are left? Where are the things? Did anything from the ships get washed here?" There were hundreds of people on board in 6 ships. Sea Dog was still holding on to a trace of hope, hoping that one of the ships would be washed here by the waves. "There are still more than 10. A pirate lackey beside him spoke, "2 of them can't be saved. We came over to scout the situation. A ship is stranded on the beach over there, but the hull is badly damaged. Most of our brothers are dead. But there are still some supplies." It was a little better than he expected. Sea Dog's complexion looked a lot better as he ordered, "Let's head back first. This place is very strange. Who knows if there are any damn things here?" The ship was still here. Even if it was damaged, there were still some things left inside. With a few more surviving subordinates by his side, Sea Dog's mind became active. After a while he would investigate the situation here. If it was really a desolate and ownerless land, it would be considered as a discovery. The trade with the east this time was basically ruined. If he returned to the south coast he might even be punished. If he could find something here he might be interested in asking Sir Soren to give him a way out. After all, Sir Soren's ambition was very big. Although this place looked like a godforsaken place, it might be of some use. After returning, he planned to organize a group of people to explore this place and make a nautical chart to determine the location. There were many unknown places in the ocean. Because it was easy to encounter sea monsters in the deep sea, there were some places that pirates had never been to. Looking at the situation here, Sea Dog intuitively felt that this was a new land without a master. Perhaps a great disaster happened in a certain era, resulting in this desolate place. Eastern Sea Region. If he could find a place to stay in the Eastern Sea Region, he might be able to make up for his mistakes and maintain his current position. After all, his subordinates had already guessed that Sir Soren was preparing to reach into the Eastern Sea Region. Chapter 590. Back to the coast. Sea Dog saw a big ship stranded, but the hull was broken and leaking. Even the mast was broken. There were corpses of his men on the beach, and the survivors were collecting these corpses. No matter what others said, even if they were notorious pirates, these people were after all brothers who fought back to back. They should at least have a decent grave if they died in a shipwreck. Well, Sea Dog's expression was a little sad. Although he ate, drank, gambled, and did all kinds of evil, these men were his own team. Many of them were old brothers who had followed him for many years, and a few of them had saved his life. Now that they all died here, he always felt suffocated in his heart. These were the elites of Mordor, and there were veterans who had fought with other pirate kings. They did not die under the enemy's sword, but died in a storm. It was really sad to think about it. Pack up. Sea Dog saw the body of a young man. This was the nephew of one of his old brothers. He had followed old Sea Dog for a long time. He had also received assassin training in Motor City. His skills were quite good. This young man, who was supposed to be very promising, had now become a cold corpse. Sea Dog squatted down and closed his eyes. The corners of his eyes were a little wet. Almost all of them were dead. Hundreds of brothers, I don't know how many of them survived. Sea Dog couldn't wait to slap himself a few times. At that time, the navigator told him that the storm was approaching, but he was greedy to reach the Eastern Kingdom as soon as possible. As a result, the fleet did not dock for a day and was directly caught by the terrible storm. It would be a lie to say that he did not feel pain and self-blame. The pirates of Mordor were all veterans, and their friendship was accumulated with blood and fire when they conquered other pirates. Now that so many people were dead and injured, even if he went back alive, he didn't know how to explain it to Sir Soren. Sea Dog was not decadent for long. Soon he stood up again and said in a deep voice, "Everyone pack up the things that can be used. No matter what, we have to get out of here alive." His men quickly moved. With a leader they had a backbone. The materials on the broken ship were collected little by little. Boss. At this moment, a limping pirate arrived before old Sea Dog and handed him a black flag. "This thing is still here. Should we bring it along?" Black flag. The flag of Mordor City? Nonsense. With a slap, Sea Dog snatched the flag away, picked up a wooden stick and inserted it into the ground. The black chess piece fluttered in the sea breeze on this unfamiliar land. Old Sea Dog stood on the beach and gazed into the distance, muttering, "The black flag is still there. Our sixth fleet hasn't been destroyed yet. When we encounter other pirates we can still regroup." The subordinate next to him didn't understand and muttered, "Just the few of us?" "Can you swallow up the other pirates?" Slap. Another slap was delivered. Sea Dog glared at him and said in a deep voice, "Mordor City annexed other pirates. One black flag is enough." These words were spoken with a heroic spirit. But Sea Dog's heart was still a little weak. If it was the south coast, naturally one black flag would be enough. Those small groups of pirates had to cry and shout to join Mordor City, but this place belonged to the Eastern Sea, and old Sea Dog wasn't sure if the black flag of Mordor City had that kind of power in this strange sea. No matter what, the flag was the morale. This black flag couldn't be lost. Windspear Hills North. This was the territory of Barren Narrows. It was a territory that wasn't very rich or eye-catching, and it was backed by a mountain range. There were always some eccentric guys among the nobles. Baron Narrows was such a person. He rarely dealt with other nobles. His family had been passed down for hundreds of years. It had never declined, but it had never risen. There was not enough fertile land here, so the taxes were not much. The population was only about half of the population of other lords. Many of them were mountain people who relied on hunting for a living. But there was something else here. The cold night wind blew out from the valley. Two young men were standing guard around a bonfire. The temperature here dropped a lot at night. As a slightly different creature, they were actually afraid of the cold. Because they were snake people. They were born cold-blooded animals. Even if they disguised themselves well, their nature couldn't be changed. "It's so cold." One of the young men approached the bonfire and said in a slightly cursed tone, "That bitch Ulrika is back." "Yes." The other man nodded. The young man seemed to be very disgusted with the woman named Ulrika. He cursed, "Why didn't that bitch die outside? Last time she went out on a mission. So many people died and only she came back. Since she came back, it has been strange." Later, there were even people from the Fear sect who came to find her. If you ask me, the failure of the mission must have something to do with her. She should be executed directly. His companion next to him didn't answer, which made the young man feel strange. He turned his head and took a look, but found that the other party was staring blankly ahead. His eyes seemed to be shrouded in fear. Horrifying. This situation almost scared him. When he looked at the direction of his companion's line of sight, he suddenly felt a little strange. There was a little girl in front of him. She was a very, very cute little girl. She looked to be around 10 years old and was wearing a black princess dress. Her delicate legs were covered with snow-white stockings and a pair of exquisite leather boots. She looked at the two people in front of her with a smile. Her smile was so cute and moving that it was as if she was a little angel that had fallen to earth. However, everything in front of him made him involuntarily feel cold all over. Even his body began to stiffen. An indescribable sense of fear shrouded his mind. Finally found them. The cute little girl clapped her little hands and muttered to herself, "Vivian, do you think we should kill them? Or kill them?" She was strangely talking to herself. Some kind of power shrouded the two young snake people, making them unable to make a sound even if they wanted to shout. "Lillian." The cute little girl stood on the spot and muttered to herself. She whispered, "These two people may be of some use. The snake people are a very excellent race. Maybe we can consider controlling them first and then conquering the Fear sect." "Okay. Then let's not kill them first. Let's go and see another little toy." It turns out that the Fear sect has found our little toy. No wonder that happened. A light breeze blew. The two young snake people suddenly regained consciousness, but their bodies were still shrouded in a chill. Too terrifying. Although she looked like a cute little girl, her aura was too terrifying. Chapter 591. Writing is very smooth today. In the exquisitely built manor, a group of guards was waiting outside. Today was the day when Baron Narrows welcomed a distinguished guest. Lady Adele Isabella, the descendant of Queen Isabella who had returned from Arundel, was invited to come here for a day of play. In the vicinity of the Wind Spear Hills, the Isabella clan was the absolute ruler. There were two barons nearby who had the descendant of Queen Isabella and a viscount who managed a large territory in the Wind Spear Hills. During this period, many nobles had boarded Arundel's route through Lady Adele Isabella. It was said that as long as the fleet returned, they could earn a lot of profits. Baron Narrows's territory was relatively barren. Because there were mountains on three sides, there was not much land that could be reclaimed. Therefore he planned to invest in marine trade today. Of course, he had a deeper idea if there was a chance to implement it. "Baron." A middle-aged man dressed as a butler came to Baron Narrows's side and whispered, "Lady Adele, Isabella went out to hunt with her entourage. The people you need to arrange are all in place." Baron Narrows was a middle-aged man with a cold appearance. He looked very handsome, but there was an indescribable strangeness on his face. If one looked closely, his gaze was as cold as a snake, and the outline of his face was too sharp. "Very good." Baron Narrows nodded slightly and said slowly, "Is Ulrika back? How did she get involved with the Fear Church? These Fear believers are troublesome. We can't get too close to them." The Nagas had long been mixed in with humans. Many of them were like vampires, living in seclusion in remote areas as small nobles. Most of the Nagas were mixed blood, so it was difficult to distinguish them. Even if someone knew, both sides would take a step back. "I don't think so." The middle-aged butler shook his head and said, "Your Excellency, I suggest we deal with her. Since the last mission failed, many people have been dissatisfied with her." Baron Narrows looked hesitant. He hesitated because Ulrika was actually his illegitimate daughter. The Nagas could not only reproduce with other Nagas, but they also had no reproductive isolation with humans. Therefore many Nagas were born this way. The purebred Nagas were oviparous. However, the mixed-blood Nagas became viviparous. Baron Narrows didn't have much affection for his daughter, but she was still his daughter. He didn't want her to be punished too severely. Even cold-blooded animals had a little bit of familial ties. "I understand." Baron Narrows thought for a moment and waved his hand. "Lock her up when she comes back. Don't torture her." The middle-aged butler nodded slightly and said, "Yes, Lord Baron." Baron Narrows turned to look out the window and slowly said, "The focus is still on Lady Adele Isabella. She has an important role in the growth of our family." "Understood." The middle-aged butler nodded and left. Outside a dense forest, Adele Isabella changed her clothes and rode on a black horse. On the surface she was hunting with her men, but in fact she was observing the environment of the territory. The Windspear Hills was the key to Sir Soren's plan. This place was directly connected to the Sunken Ship Islands, and it was also very close to the inland area. She had heard a little about Baron Narrows. This was a family with snake blood. They were obstacles that needed to be cleaned up. In just a few months, Adele Isabella had already gained her own reputation in the south. She was also secretly operating. Now she was just waiting for the right opportunity. "Let's stop here." Adele Isabella gently waved her hand and said, "We will go to the manor. Tell the people below to be careful. This Baron Narrows seems to have some bad intentions." However, at this moment a guard suddenly exclaimed in front. "Who is it?" A tall figure walked out from the forest. Adele Isabella glanced at it and couldn't help but frown slightly. It was a woman with a rather gorgeous appearance. Adele Isabella didn't know why, but looking at her made her feel uncomfortable. It was as if she was facing Baron Narrows. However, at this moment, a little girl wearing a black princess dress walked out from behind the woman. She looked like a little angel who had fallen from the mortal world. When Adele Isabella saw the other party's appearance, she suddenly trembled. She directly jumped down from the horse and knelt down in front of the little girl. "Miss? Why are you here?" Immediately behind Adele Isabella, the masters who were responsible for protecting her also knelt down on one knee and said with a surprised expression, "Miss? Miss." Everyone in Mordor City knew the little princess, His Highness Vivian, His Excellency Soren's sweetheart. These people who were selected to perform the task were all masters, many of them were high-grade professions. How could these people not hear of Vivian's name? She was the treasure of Mordor City. Vivian raised her delicate eyebrows slightly, tilted her head and glanced at Adele Isabella, then said a little surprised, "It's you. Your hair has changed color. Why are you here?" Brothers men. She had seen some of them before. The little girl's memory had always been very good. Their appearance here was probably related to her brother's plan. However, she also had her own plan. "Okay." The little girl gently clapped her hands and said slowly, "Since you are here, I want to conquer this land. With your help, it should be much easier." The other people present looked at each other. Adele Isabella's expression was a little stiff, but she still braced herself and said, "Conquer here? What was the miss doing?" Vivian glanced at the gorgeous woman beside her, who was as silent as a cicada in winter, and a sinister smile appeared on her face as she said in a crisp voice, "The lord of this place is a snake person, and they are of some use to me. This woman is my servant. She is the lord's illegitimate daughter. Let's kill the lord later and then let her control the snake men. It's a very simple matter." The other people present twitched their mouths. Adele Isabella's forehead was overflowing with cold sweat, and she said carefully, "Your Excellency Vivian, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Many of them may not be willing to obey you." Clap, clap, clap. The little girl gently patted her white little hands and chuckled, "I know. But I don't have time to waste here, so those who don't want to obey me should just die." The sun was shining brightly. For some reason the other people present suddenly felt a chill in their hearts. They suddenly thought of His Excellency Soren, who was the real god of death. They thought that Vivian was just a little girl, but they forgot that she was His Excellency Soren's sister. She might also be a god of death. Chapter 592. Baron Nero's mansion. This exquisite noble manor was filled with a faint smell of blood. The carefully watered mandala flowers were now broken, and there were a few cold corpses in the corner. However, these corpses were a little different. They gradually changed after death. A layer of silver-white scales appeared on the surface of their skin. It looked like they had psoriasis. These were all mixed blood Nagas. The blood of the Nagas turned them into creatures between humans and snakes. Mississippi. Now Adele Isabella was wearing a tight leather armor, revealing her tall and moving figure. She was holding a long sword in her hand, which was still stained with blood. There were other high-grade professions from Mordor City nearby, and there were many snake people's corpses scattered on the ground. Baron Nero's was among these corpses. Part of his brain had been corroded by strong acid. As a half-legendary Naga, he should have died the most aggrieved death. He didn't even have time to react before he was drowned by the sea of spells. In terms of the ability to cast instant spells, Soren could only carry Vivian's shoes. In a round of attacks, Arcane Missiles X8, Flame Arrows X3, and Melf's Acid Arrows X3, a quasi-legendary Naga Lord was killed by Vivian on the spot. The little girl originally had a very high level of Warlock, and now she was also a part-time wizard. It could be said that she completely crushed the majority of spellcasters in terms of spell slots, especially when it came to low-level spell slots. Vivian's intelligence and charm were extremely high, and just the number of first-level spell slots added up to a terrifying 13. The poor Baron Nero's was shot into a sieve. The rest of the battle was left to Adele Isabella and her elite subordinates. The Nagas did not have much ability to resist and were quickly suppressed. Mississippi, a Naga who looked like a middle-aged butler was brought in front of Vivian. Adele went over and kicked his knee, forcing him to kneel in front of the little girl. Vivian's expression was very calm. She looked at the Naga in front of her and said slowly, "Surrender or die?" It was a very simple question. The middle-aged Naga struggled, but in the end, he shook his head and a trace of hatred appeared in his eyes. Disintegrate. A green beam of light shot out, and the middle-aged Naga butler was disintegrated just like that. Vivian calmly waved her small white hand and nonchalantly said, "Next." The second Naga was brought up. The little girl asked the same question again, "Submit or die?" A second corpse appeared. Vivian did not seem to be impatient. When the third Naga was brought up, she still had the same expression. She calmly said, "Submit or die?" At this moment, the Nagas could no longer suppress the fear on their faces. Even the nearby advanced professionals kept quiet out of fear, as if they saw the shadow of Sir Soren and Vivian. Back then, the Order of the South Coast was established amidst such peaceful but cruel killings. "I'm willing to serve you." The Naga knelt in front of Vivian. At the same time, a special wave of magic emerged, accompanied by the pressure of the domain of fear. Vivian left her enslavement mark on the Naga in front of her. Fear could help her enslave servants. Everything in front of them was still going on. Vivian asked methodically, and any Naga who refused would be killed mercilessly. The whole process was simple but efficient. Vivian's new servants had finished counting. There were a total of 123 Nagas. All of them were professionals. Excluding the female Nagas who were not strong in combat, there were still more than 50 Nagas whose strength was above grade 2, and 12 of them had reached grade 3 or above. Just like that, a useful armed force was born. Time passed quietly. During this time, something happened near the Wind Spear Hills. That was, a lord near the Wind Spear Hills accidentally died under the attack of the evil Nagas. These evil Nagas attacked Baron Nero's and killed him and his 2 sons in cold blood. Although Lady Adele Isabella from Arendelle went to visit at that time, and the advanced professionals brought by the lady were fully protected, they still suffered heavy losses. More than half of Baron Nero's guards were killed or injured, and even he himself died of exhaustion after heroically killing 3 evil Nagas. Now the one who took over this territory was Baron Nero's daughter, Ulrika. She was now the only direct heir of Baron Nero's. This matter slowly spread from the territory to the outside. At the same time, many noble lords saw the bodies of the murderers brought out by Lady Adele Isabella. These ferocious Nagas also suffered heavy losses. On the one hand, the nobles in the south mourned the tragedy of Baron Nero's. On the other hand, they gloated to see if they could get some benefits. Witnesses, physical evidence, and the bodies of the murderers. Even if everything in front of them was strange, no one was willing to delve into it. Because too many things had happened recently. All of this was done by the Mordor Intelligence Organization. Since knowing that the young lady had made such a big mess, the half-elf first mate was so anxious that he almost lost a few strands of hair. However, he quickly realized that this was an opportunity to show off his abilities, so he quickly mobilized his intelligence network and contacted Adele Isabella in front of him. This was the first time he had cooperated with his competitor, and the whole incident was completely turned in their favor. A noble couldn't die without knowing why. It was too easy to attract trouble. That was why they mobilized the huge intelligence network of Mordor and finally directed such a scene. Baron Narrows was attacked and killed by the evil Nagas. His only daughter, Ulrika, became the heir. Adele Isabella expressed her deep condolences. Many nobles accused the evil Nagas of attacking the nobles and then sympathized with them on the surface. Everything seemed to have passed by. The half-elf first mate once again showed his flexible political skills, and Adele Isabella got closer to the young lady because of this incident. Both sides could be said to have gained something. However, this incident also gave Adele Isabella an inspiration. She thought of how to get rid of a few annoying nobles reasonably and then complete the task given by Sir Soren. Since there was the first time a noble was attacked by the Nagas, it was normal for there to be a second time, right? Maybe. There should be more traces of Nagas in the south. If someone died in the hands of the Nagas, then everything would be logical, right? The web of conspiracy from Mordor City had now shrouded the sky above the Wind Spear Hills. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.